Hey friends, tonight, let's explore a world where high cheekbones and protruding teeth could make or break your social status. You're waking up on a chilly morning inside a drafty stone chamber that echoes with the flutter of tapestries and the quiet scratch of a mouse somewhere in the corner. Outside the arrow-slit window, the sun is barely a pale smear in the mist, but you're already sitting up because today is Portrait Day. And that means you'll have to look your best by 14th century standards. Your maid Marjorie probably brings over a hand mirror made from polished tin. You squint into it, and what stares back isn't exactly a reflection. It's more like a vague idea of a face with no color accuracy. Still, it's enough for you to check. Is your forehead high enough? Are your cheeks sunken just right? In this century, beauty is not about glowing skin or plump lips. No, what you really want is a face that suggests you've been through something, preferably something holy. High cheekbones are desirable because they hint at aristocratic suffering. A wide forehead suggests intellectual depth, or at the very least, a noble upbringing with access to tutors and no sun. And your teeth slightly crooked is okay, even endearing. In fact, a bit of overbite, what modern dentists would scowl at, is charming in some circles. It makes your mouth look smaller, daintier, like the kind of mouth that shouldn't be bothered with chewing too much coarse bread. You press your fingers gently into your cheeks. Are they hollow enough? You haven't been sick lately, which is unfortunate. The consumptive chic look is very in right now. Some girls have even been known to wear tight cloth bands around their faces overnight, hoping to reshape their jawlines. No judgment, just don't fall asleep too hard, or you might suffocate on beauty. Down in the Great Hall, a painter from Florence is setting up his easel. He's the kind of man who sniffs a lot and wears too many rings. He'll be immortalizing your image for your betrothal scroll, which means your face might end up in a family chapel for the next 300 years. No pressure. You walk slowly down the stairs, practicing your best demure expression. Slightly sad eyes. No visible teeth. Tilt your head just enough to suggest fragile dignity, but not so much that you look dizzy. A servant hands you a piece of stale bread to chew just enough to make your cheekbones pop. It's a trick passed down from older sisters and aging aunts who knew how to get noticed at a feast without saying a word. As the painter begins to sketch, he pauses. Wider forehead, he mutters. Marjorie steps forward, ready with a bit of lemon and lye to bleach your hairline. Another half-inch of scalp, and you'll look like you just read the entire Bible and understood all of it. Behind you, someone sneezes. You jump, forgetting for a second how tightly your corset is laced. The painter scowls. Don't move. We want timeless beauty, not surprise. Time drips slowly through the cold air. You can feel your nose starting to drip. You resist the urge to sniff because moving your face could alter your entire legacy. And still, your thoughts wander. Are you beautiful enough to marry well, to gain power, to not get locked away in a convent when your father dies and your brother forgets you exist? It's strange. You were born into a world where being beautiful could change your fate, and yet no one really agrees on what beauty is. One duchess favors girls with round eyes. Another insists on thin lips and bony fingers. A knight once told your cousin she looked like a blessed statue. She cried for days. He meant it as a compliment. Sometimes you envy the village girls. They don't have to worry about being beautiful, just useful. Sometimes beautiful and useful overlap. Sometimes they don't. That's the gamble. As the session ends, you're allowed to relax your face. The ache in your cheekbones is real, But that's the price of legacy. The painter nods. He's pleased. He says you look spiritually thin, which you take as the highest praise of the day. You wander back upstairs and lie flat on a wooden bed, stuffed with straw and lavender. Your head spins a little, but maybe that's a good thing. Dizziness has a romantic glow to it, especially when paired with a tragic cough. And as you drift into sleep, you think maybe beauty is pain. Or maybe beauty is pretending pain makes you deeper. Either way, your portrait will hang somewhere important. Eventually. And let's be honest, at least no one asked you to pluck your eyelashes this time. Oh, did I forget to mention? That becomes a trend later. But that's a story for another part. Joke count for the night. That's the price of legacy. Sore cheekbones and suppressed sneezes. Spiritually thin is the original Instagram filter. At least you don't have to bleach your soul. Yet, you're sitting in front of the window, now staring at your reflection in a silver basin filled with water that smells faintly of rose petals and something else, something sharp. That would be the vinegar. Today's task achieved the ideal medieval complexion, which is to say, pale. Translucent even. Not the kind of pale that comes from skipping the sun, but the kind that suggests you've never even heard of sunlight. And the best way to get there, according to every noble woman you know, lead. That's right. You reach for a little ceramic jar, imported expensive, and just a touch terrifying. Inside, Venetian ceruse. It's a creamy white paste made from vinegar and white lead. And it's about to become your best friend. Or your worst enemy. Possibly both. Marjorie holds a cloth dipped in cold water and carefully wipes your face. Then she uses a tiny spoon to smear the ceruse along your cheeks, your forehead, your chin. It smells like elegance and death. You sit still while it dries. The effect is instant. Your skin gleams like marble, like a statue of the Virgin in the side chapel, like someone who hasn't eaten bread in 3 days and is definitely too holy to be sun-kissed. Unfortunately, your pores are already protesting. But that's tomorrow's problem. Today, you're going to visit your betrothed's family, and you need to look like the kind of woman who glows with virtue and high birth, not melanin. The rules are simple. If you're tanned, you're probably working outdoors. If you're working outdoors, you're probably not aristocracy. If you're not aristocracy, why are you even here? So you keep your gloves on. Your veil is long, and you walk in the shade always. It's less about fashion, more about survival of your status, at least. But here's the part. No one likes to mention that lead paste. It doesn't just sit there. It soaks in. Over time, it blackens your teeth, destroys your skin, and yes, can even kill you. Slowly, elegantly. There are stories of noble women who died mysteriously, their skin flaking, their minds drifting into fog. Nobody says it was the ceruse, but everybody knows. Still, you dip your brush back into the jar. A little more around the nose, a little on the eyelids. Flawless. To finish the look, Marjorie dabs a bit of crushed berries onto your lips. You briefly consider smiling. Then remember, smiling too much makes you look accessible. You fold your hands in your lap and practice your gaze, slightly distant, slightly tragic, like someone who once read a love poem and never recovered. As the carriage bumps down the muddy road, you keep your head high, neck stiff, trying not to let your painted skin crack. A single bead of sweat trickles down your back, but your face stays perfect. That's the power of toxic beauty. You arrive at the manor, glowing like a holy vision. Your future mother-in-law compliments your heavenly color. You thank her, and try not to sneeze from the strong scent of her lavender perfume. Later, over supper, a young cousin leans in and whispers, "Why does your face look like parchment?" You resist the urge to throw your wine. Back home, Marjorie peels the paste from your cheeks. Your skin is raw underneath. It tingles in protest, like it remembers what natural oils feel like. You dab on a bit of honey and chamomile to soothe the sting, though you know it won't help much. As you lie back in bed, staring at the wooden beams above you, wonder what if beauty didn't hurt? What if sun-kissed skin were lovely and freckles were stars instead of flaws? But that's not the world you live in, at least not yet. And besides being beautiful is your job, your inheritance, your weapon. Even if it's laced with poison, you're staring at your face in a polished bronze mirror, the kind that distorts just enough to make you wonder if your nose has always bent that way. But it's not your nose you're worried about tonight, it's your forehead. Specifically, whether it's high enough. See, in this particular century, people don't just want a wide, noble forehead. They chase it like it's the holy grail of facial real estate. A broad, bare expanse of pale skin above the brows. That's intellect. That's status. That's fashion. So tonight, you're caving to the pressure. You take a deep breath, hold up your tiny blade, and begin the ritual. You start plucking your eyebrows, every last hair, until your face looks like it forgot what expressions are. Marjorie watches from the corner, holding a candle and shaking her head, the way people do when they're both impressed and mildly horrified. And then the hairline. You take a ribbon soaked in walnut oil and tie it around your head to hold back the rest of your locks. You pinch a few strands at the very top of your forehead just past your brows and pluck. Again, and again, and again. It stings. A lot. But with each pluck, your forehead climbs higher. Soon, it starts to resemble something worthy of a cathedral ceiling. You step back and look again. There it is, the noble dome of aristocracy. You are now officially enlightened, if not in spirit, then at least in scalp. You wonder how this even started. Some say it came from portraits of the Virgin Mary. Others blame it on French queens who popularized the look. But regardless of origin, the trend spreads like wildfire among the elite. And you're nothing if not obedient to fashion. Your friends at court have taken it a step further. They bleach the baby hairs, shave their temples, and wear pearl-dotted nets to draw attention to what little hair remains. One girl even tattooed a faint line where her brows used to be, in case anyone forgot she had them. At dinner that evening, a fellow noblewoman leans across the table and whispers, "Your brow is divine." So ecclesiastical. You thank her politely, while mentally noting she missed a spot above her right ear. When you return to your chamber, you massage your sore scalp and reflect on how odd this whole beauty standard is. 10 years ago, a low, rounded forehead was the mark of youthful charm. 10 years from now, who knows? Maybe the next trend will be to grow your hair over your eyes and pretend to be mysterious. Still, you're committed. You even start practicing facial expressions that highlight your brow: wide-eyed surprise, contemplative sorrow, mild disdain. You try them in front of the mirror. Marjorie coughs behind you. "You look like a very polite ghost, my lady." "Perfect," you reply. And here's the funny part for all the pain and ritual and plucking and regret. It works. People treat you differently. They assume you read Latin, that you understand poetry, that you have opinions about theology, which to be fair you do. But it's strange. how much weight people give to a few inches of bare skin. You start wearing hoods that push your hairline back even more. You keep a collection of headbands and veils for different occasions, meals, prayers, long sighs at the window. Soon, you forget what your face used to look like. And that's okay, because everyone agrees you've never looked smarter. Even if at night you secretly miss your eyebrows, you're sitting by the hearth, trying not to nod off, while a spinning wheel hums in the background, and someone in the corridor practices the lute poorly. Tonight's thoughts aren't about hairlines or paint or poison. They're about bodies, yours specifically, and what it should look like. Which is a tricky question in the Middle Ages, because, well, nobody can quite agree on the answer. Unlike those clean-cut beauty templates of future fashion magazines, medieval body standards are a murky regional mess. In some circles, the ideal woman is soft and round, with a belly that suggests both fertility and an endless supply of butter. In others, she's slender, almost fragile, the kind of figure that looks poetic, even when she's fainting. And then there's the class factor. If you're a peasant, a strong, stocky build is actually a compliment. It means you're healthy, capable, and probably know how to carry 2 buckets of water without crying. But if you're noble, suddenly strength is vulgar. You're not supposed to do things. You're supposed to drift from one cushioned chair to another like a decorative ghost with opinions on Latin psalms. You run your hand down your bodice and wonder if you're the right shape today. Yesterday, your aunt declared that hips are the new forehead. No one knew what she meant, but everyone nodded. She once hosted a feast where the centerpiece was a sculpture of a perfectly plump maiden, carved entirely from lard. They say a bishop almost proposed to it. Meanwhile, your cousin, who recently married a Flemish merchant, swears that up north, women are stuffing padding into their sleeves and backsides to mimic the look of abundance. One girl even fainted at a banquet from overheating, but at least she looked prosperous on the way down. It's not just women either. Men have their own body goals. A thick neck and strong calves are ideal for knights. But if you're a scholar or cleric, looking thin and sickly is on vogue. It proves you're too deep in thought to eat properly. You once heard of a monk who fasted until his ribs played music when he bent over. He was declared aesthetic in the most literal sense. So, what are you supposed to be? Tonight you try a little of everything. You add a belt to exaggerate your waist, then wrap a shawl around your shoulders to create bulk. You pinch your cheeks for color, and then smear chalk on your chest to seem paler. Contradictions, all of them. And yet somehow, that's beauty. At the feast, later, a troubadour sings a ballad about a maiden with a belly like spring rain and arms like ivory bread. You nod along politely, not entirely sure if those are compliments or appetizers. The lord of the manor compliments your noble carriage, which you decide is a nice way of saying you slouched less than usual. And then there's the embroidery. Your gown tonight has tiny symbols stitched into the hem. Flowers, birds, little prayers. You've been told these distract from any imperfections of shape. You've also been told they invite admiration from angels. Either way, you hope they're working. Back in your chamber, you lie on the straw mattress and stretch your arms. You think about how exhausting it is to be a canvas for other people's ideas. One century celebrates plumpness as wealth. Another wants bones like piano keys. Next week, someone will declare that elbows are erotic. There's no winning. So you decide just for tonight to be all of them. Round, soft, thoughtful, sturdy, hollow-cheeked and wide-hipped, a medieval mosaic of whatever they want you to be. And as you fall asleep, the fire crackles quietly and the wind hums through the shutters. You dream that you're dancing weightless and glowing in a gown stitched with contradictions, and everyone applauds. The room smells faintly of ashes, violets, and something minty. You're sitting in a carved wooden chair, while Marjorie peers into your open mouth with the intensity of a monk inspecting a sacred text. In her hand is a bundle of twigs tied together with linen, a medieval toothbrush. And today is Teeth Day. You're not sure if this counts as grooming or penance. See, dental hygiene is a bit of an improvisational art right now. There's no toothpaste, no floss, no peppermint commercials, just a rotating cast of powders, rinses, and whispered suggestions from elderly apothecaries who look like they haven't smiled since the Crusades. This morning, you're using powdered sage and crushed salt. Yesterday, it was a charcoal mix with rosemary. Tomorrow, maybe powdered deer antler if the butcher is feeling generous. You swirl a rinse made from vinegar and honey. It burns a little, which you take as a sign of effectiveness. Then Marjorie hands you a tiny bitter root to chew. Cleans the breath, she says. Also keeps spirits away. Multitasking. You love it. But you know, it's not just about being clean. It's about being kissable in the courtly way. Because breath, oh breath, matters. You once heard a bard compare a lady's breath to the exhale of a rose in spring. Your uncle said it sounded like poetry, written by someone who'd never smelled a real rose. Still, you do your best. You dab a little clove oil under your tongue and chew fennel seeds during dinner. You've even stopped eating onions, except on Thursdays, when the cook insists they're good for your internal balance. And what about the teeth themselves? Well, straightness isn't really a concern. Neither is whiteness. What matters more is having them. Bonus points if they're not black. You smile into the basin and count. Still 22. Not bad for your age. Some of your friends paint their teeth with herbal dyes to look darker on purpose. It shows restraint, one says, fanning herself. Like I'm too refined for crunchy things. You nod, then immediately bite into a hard apple just to prove your jaw works. There's a rumor going around that the Queen of Naples has a secret formula made from cinnamon bark and crushed pearls. Another noblewoman tried to copy it, but ended up with swollen gums and a lisp. You've learned to be cautious, but you still take pride in the rituals. At night, you rub your teeth with linen. You rinse with lavender tea. You keep a little pouch of mint leaves by your bed, just in case someone unexpectedly calls on you after dark, which honestly never happens, but still, hope is free. And here's the part no one tells you: a good smile might not win you a husband, but it does win you allies. Your steward trusts you more when your breath doesn't smell like goat cheese. Your priest thinks you're spiritually pure if your lips don't stick to your teeth mid-confession. Even the horses seem calmer when you whisper to them mentally. Later that evening, you attend a small poetry reading in the Great Hall. Someone recites a verse about a lady whose breath lulled a hawk to sleep. Everyone sighs dreamily. You resist the urge to suggest hawk sedation might have more to do with poor ventilation. Still, you smile softly. Your mouth tastes like time and dignity. Back in your chamber, you lie under the wool blankets, mouth clean, heart calm. You wonder what future people will use for dental care. Some kind of magical paste in tubes. Maybe mechanical brushes powered by lightning sounds absurd. You're pretty sure nothing will ever beat sage and salt and a twig lovingly chewed into bristles. There's a small wooden bowl in front of you. In it, a raw egg yolk, a splash of stale beer, 2 crushed walnuts, and wait, is that charcoal? Yes. Yes, it is. Welcome to medieval hair care. Tonight, your goal is simple, fabulous locks. Not for vanity, of course. That would be sinful. No, this is for modesty, grace, and the illusion of holiness. At least that's what you'll tell anyone who asks. You pick up a brush, made from stiff boar bristles, and begin the ritual. First, Marjorie helps you apply the egg and beer mixture to your scalp. It's cold and slimy and smells a bit like breakfast gone wrong. Then you lean over a basin while she pours warm rainwater over your head, catching the runoff in a jug to reuse later. Waste not want, not even when it comes to egg yolk shampoo. As she works the mixture through your hair, she hums an old ballad about a woman whose hair was so long it had to be braided by 3 nuns and a goat. You're pretty sure it's not historically accurate, but you let it slide. Hair in your time is complicated business. For unmarried women, it must be long, clean, and covered. Long hair is a symbol of virtue. Covered hair is a symbol of modesty. You're expected to maintain both without looking like you're trying too hard, which, let's be honest, is already a paradox. Married women, on the other hand, can wrap their hair tighter than a rolled scroll. Coils, braids, veils, sometimes even horns. Yes, actual wireframes shaped like horns draped with silk. Nothing says domestic authority like towering silk antlers. But back to your routine. After rinsing, you pat your hair dry with a linen cloth that smells faintly of rosemary. Then comes the second treatment oil. You rub a few drops of olive oil between your palms and smooth it through the strands. The oil adds shine and, more importantly, keeps lice from getting too comfortable. You once heard a lady from Gascony say, "If you can't blind them with beauty, at least make them slip off your scalp." Poetic, really. As your hair dries, you sit by the fire and comb slowly. 100 strokes, no more, no less. You count in your head. You lose track around 37 and start over. You sigh. Beauty requires discipline. You think about the stories you've heard of noble women dyeing their hair with saffron to get a golden hue, of servants boiling nettles and steeping their heads in the bitter broth for shine, of monks who shaved their crowns and claimed it was a holy act, not just a way to avoid tangles. Once you tried to lighten your hair with crushed lemon peel and sunlight. You ended up with a strange orange streak that your brother called the mark of divine confusion. You wore a hat for 3 months. Tonight, though you're feeling elegant, you braid your damp hair into a simple twist, then wrap it under a silk cap embroidered with lilies. You leave a few wisps out near your temples, just enough to suggest casual charm without venturing into scandal. Marjorie gives you a once-over and nods. "You look like you belong in a painting," she says. You smile. "One of the holy ones," she smirks. "One of the expensive ones." As you settle into bed, your head smells like beer and lavender and a little bit of triumph. You wonder briefly what hair will mean in the future. Will people curl it with fire, dye it blue? Will they cut it all off on purpose? The idea makes you shiver. But then again, beauty always evolves. For now, you dream of golden braids and horned veils and a world where egg yolks are only ever used in omelets. Your hands rest quietly in your lap. Or rather, you're trying to rest them quietly. But the linen gloves are itchy, and you've been sitting still for over an hour. The fire's warmth is making your fingers sweat. Still, you endure. Because today's lesson is how to have the hands of a lady, not just any hands, noble hands. Delicate, pale soft, and clearly unfamiliar, with the concept of manual labor. Because in the great book of medieval beauty, your hands speak volumes. If they're calloused, you're working. If they're tan, you're outdoors. If they have dirt under the nails, well, you might as well take a vow of silence. So you do what everyone does, you fake it. You soak your hands nightly in goat's milk and rose water. You scrub with fine flour and herbs. You rub in a mixture of animal fat and beeswax because no one has invented moisturizer yet. And this is the next best and weirdest thing. You wear gloves everywhere. Embroidered ones for formal dinners, plain woolen ones for church, and thin silk ones for sleeping. Yes, sleeping. No one should ever see your bare hands unless they're at least 5 paces away. There's even a rumor that Queen Isabeau once had a servant whose sole job was to polish her fingernails with a rag soaked in rainwater collected during Lent. No one knows if it's true, but it sounds noble, which is basically the same thing. Marjorie sets down a bowl of warm water and brings over the pumice stone. You wince. Exfoliation medieval style is not for the faint of heart. Afterwards, she applies a paste made from almond meal, and honey wraps your fingers in clean cloth and makes you hold them in the air like you're posing for a statue. You know, she says, my aunt once boiled cabbage leaves and used the water to soften her elbows. You nod solemnly. Nobility must be moisturized at all angles. Once the ritual ends, you check your hands in the mirror. They're pale, smooth, slightly wrinkled from soaking, but undeniably refined. The kind of hands that have never churned butter, not even by accident. At dinner, you hold your goblet with just 3 fingers, pinky extended. Your ring glints in the firelight. A visiting knight notices. You hold your wine like a prayer, he murmurs. You reply, it's the only thing I've practiced more than actual prayers. Later that evening, someone drops a platter. You instinctively move to help, but stop yourself just in time. Helping is for people with unpolished thumbs. You smile politely and let a page boy clean up the mess. You sit back down, hands in lap, still, graceful. Of course, not all noble women play by these rules. Some flaunt their freckles. Others paint their nails with crushed berries to match their lips. One bold lady in Burgundy even dipped her fingertips in gold dust before a feast. She couldn't pick up her spoon, but she looked divine. You've thought about trying something daring, but tonight you're content with your invisible elegance. Back in your chamber, you flex your fingers one by one. They're stiff. Your knuckles pop. You realize you haven't clenched your fists in days. There's no reason to. Rage is undignified. You wonder what hands will mean centuries from now. Will people paint them? Pierce them? Will they work with them? You imagine a woman with grease under her nails and calluses on her palms, confident, wild, beautiful. But that's not you. Not now. For tonight your hands remain silent witnesses, symbols of status, perfectly preserved and slightly itchy. You sit before a small mirror, propped up on a carved oak table, lit by the flickering glow of beeswax candles. Your face is calm, solemn, not because you're deep in prayer or mourning, because you're doing your makeup, which in the Middle Ages means turning yourself into a ghost with just the faintest hint of fruit. The goal? To look ethereal, untouchable, a being of quiet virtue who may or may not be suffering from a very romantic fever. Tonight's palette is limited white red and maybe a whisper of blue if you're feeling dangerous. First, the base, You dip your fingers into a chalky paste, lead-based as always, and spread it evenly across your cheeks, forehead, chin. It clings like dust and dries like paint. Your skin turns pale as parchment, exactly as intended. You glance in the mirror. You resemble a saint carved from candle wax. Excellent. Next comes the rouge made from crushed beetles, if you're wealthy, or just mashed berries, if you're not. Marjorie dabs it high on your cheekbones, far from the apples of your cheeks. A flush that's too natural is suspicious. You want to look like you're blushing from grace, not from ale. Now the lips. You press a slice of dried cherry to your mouth, then stain the center with a pinch of wine sediment. The goal is a small, bow-shaped mouth, delicate and slightly sad, like you've just heard bad news and are too noble to complain. A final touch, a drop of lavender oil behind each ear, to complete the illusion that you naturally smell like a meadow that's never seen hardship. You look up, and what stares back is not entirely you. It's a version of you, curated for admiration at a distance. The kind of beauty that's sacred, not sensual. The kind that belongs in an altar, painting, not a bedroom. At dinner, your look is a success. Everyone avoids eye contact, which is the ultimate compliment. You are officially too divine for casual conversation. Someone calls you otherworldly. You pretend not to hear, but as the evening winds down and your face begins to itch beneath the layers of powder, you wonder, how did this become the ideal? Some scholars say it comes from religious art. The Virgin Mary always shone pale and solemn. Others think it's just a convenient way to reinforce who gets to stay inside all day, away from sun and sweat and labor. You know one girl who tried to brighten her look with green eyeshadow made from malachite. She was sent home for heretical cheekbones. Another got caught applying color too boldly and was accused of witchcraft. They said she was using glamour to deceive noblemen, as if men were so easily confused by a little blush. You're careful not to overdo it. At bedtime, the ritual reverses. Marjorie peels the mixture from your skin with oil and warm cloth. You stare at your reflection, barefaced, blotchy real. You touch your cheeks. They're soft but tingling. You whisper hello to yourself just to check if your lips still work under the powdered silence. They do. Tomorrow, you'll paint them again. You'll become the portrait, the saint, the idea. But for now, in the quiet dark, you let your skin breathe. And for a moment, being invisible feels like freedom. You're standing very, very still. The maid is behind you, tugging at something that feels like it might be a corset, or possibly a punishment devised by saints with a dark sense of humor. Either way, you haven't taken a full breath in 3 minutes. Tonight, you're dressing for a formal feast, and the centerpiece of your ensemble is the gown, not just any gown. This one is velvet jewel-toned, embroidered at the hem, and lined with stiff panels designed to make your waist appear small enough to fit through a keyhole. Your arms are pinned down by tight sleeves. Your shoulders are pulled back by unseen forces. Your ribs are whispering gentle protests in Latin. This apparently is the pinnacle of elegance. Your reflection in the polished metal mirror confirms it. You look beautiful, stately, slightly terrified. The medieval silhouette is all about geometry, long vertical lines, narrow waists, high busts. You've trained for this look like a soldier going into battle. Hours of posture drills, months of skipping second helpings, years of pretending that comfortable is a sinful word. The belt cinching your middle has more authority than most dukes. It's adorned with tiny bells that jingle when you move, so you don't move much. And the shoes? Technically, they're shoes. Functionally, they're velvet toe prisons with wooden soles that make you glide across the floor like a saint or a puppet. You take small steps to the window. Outside, the evening is soft. A breeze teases the torchlight. You wonder what it's like to run down the hill in linen barefoot free. Inside, you adjust your neckline. Necklines matter. Too high, and you're accused of austerity. Too low, and the priest starts quoting Leviticus. The current fashion favors a gentle dip, just enough to hint at a collarbone, but not enough to suggest you've read romantic poetry. The feast begins with introductions. You enter the hall like a cloud floating breathless, ornamental. Your dress is both armor and disguise. Every movement is rehearsed. Every gesture has weight. You take your seat with practiced grace. A servant offers wine, but you decline, not because you're pious, but because you're not sure you can drink without tipping sideways. Across the table, a lady compliments your lacing. You thank her, then ask how her lungs are doing. She smiles. They're decorative now. You both laugh, quietly, as permitted. But part of you wonders who decided beauty meant compression. The historical theory is that tightly fitted garments symbolize control, both moral and physical. You're not just well-dressed, you're disciplined. Suffering is a feature, not a bug. Back in your room, Marjorie helps you out of the dress. The air hits your ribs like a choir of angels. You stretch. It feels illegal. You examine the red lines across your waist, hips, arms. They look like battle scars. Beautiful ones. You lie down, still tingling, half hollow, halfway undone. Tomorrow, you'll wear the gown again, or another just like it. You'll lace yourself back into the shape people prefer. But tonight, for these few quiet hours, your body belongs to itself. And that in this century is its own quiet rebellion. Your shoes tap softly against the flagstone floor, no louder than a cat's paw on a quiet morning. You've been practicing. Not just walking, but walking beautifully. Because in the medieval world, beauty doesn't end with the face or the gown. It extends all the way down to your gait. And if you think walking is just a means of getting from one place to another, think again. A lady must glide. You adjust your posture. Shoulders, relaxed chin, slightly lifted. Eyes focus somewhere in the vague middle distance, as if you're pondering philosophy, but only the elegant kind. Your hands remain clasped at your waist, unless actively gesturing toward tapestries. You take small, measured steps. Never too fast, never too loud. You've trained your heels to land like whispers. You've practiced turning corners with the grace of a leaf floating downstream. Marjorie once tied bells to the hem of your underskirt. If they rang, you were walking too forcefully. You failed that test many times. The goal isn't just silence, it's stillness in motion. The illusion that your body is composed of silk and secrets. You recall the courtly manuals. A lady who walks too quickly is one who cannot control her heart. A lady who sways too much is one who thinks too much of the flesh. You remember those words mostly because the handwriting was atrocious. Today, you're accompanying the household down the corridor to meet a visiting baron. Your walk, you've been told, must say, "I am refined aware, and absolutely not late." The baron greets you with a bow. You curtsy with practiced depth, not too shallow. That's rude, not too deep. That's a yoga injury. He compliments your poise. You smile softly the way women do when they'd rather be eating bread in peace. During the conversation, You notice Lady Eleonora, known for her waddling disgrace, has improved significantly. Her stride is now a respectable glide. You make a mental note to compliment her later. Back in your room, you kick off your shoes and collapse on the bench. Your toes are red. Your calves ache. Marjorie brings a basin of warm water and a towel embroidered with lilies. You looked like you were floating, she says. Good, you reply. My feet feel like I was sinking. You soak in silence. The kind of silence that follows performance. Because that's what it is, every gesture, step breath, a performance of grace. You think about the rules of walking. Never walk ahead of a man unless you're of higher rank. Never walk behind a man unless you're lower, but not too far behind, lest it appear you're lurking. Never walk too close to another woman unless you're best friends, or rivals, or sisters. Honestly, it's complicated. You laugh to yourself, quietly, because even your laughter must be elegant. You wonder, do people in the future still train themselves to walk a certain way? Do they march? Do they dance? Do they slouch with freedom? You imagine a world where people wear clothes that let them run. You lie back on the straw-stuffed cushion feet, throbbing, mind drifting. Tonight you walked like a lady. Tomorrow, maybe you'll walk like someone who doesn't care. But probably not. Not yet. Hey friends, tonight let's explore a slightly dustier, significantly louder corner of history, the time of the Crusades. You're waking up on a straw mat in a drafty little stone monastery. The sun isn't up yet, but the bells are already howling like it's Judgment Day. That's not a metaphor. The monk who rang the bell last week actually screamed, "Repent," while doing it. Outside your window, a rooster is refusing to crow. Smart bird. He's probably seen what happens to volunteers, because this isn't just another dawn in medieval Europe. This is crusade season. And you signed up. Technically, you were convinced by a fiery priest with a voice like thunder and breath like salted meat. He said the Holy Land needed you. He said your sins would be forgiven. He said there'd be glory. You heard vacation. But instead of beaches and olives, you're getting itchy wool robes and a list of rules thicker than your breakfast porridge. Before you get too relaxed, let's recap your situation. You're somewhere near northern France, in a village where half the men are either training for war or already missing. The roads are mud. The air smells faintly of old cabbage and horse, and your task today is to prepare for a spiritual journey across thousands of miles of unfamiliar land while wearing chainmail. You don't even own shoes with matching laces. The monastery is buzzing. People shout over each other, some in Latin, some in French. And one guy named Jacques is just yelling for God while waving a wooden spoon. Jacques is your bunkmate. The monks hand out gear crosses to sew onto your tunic sandals, already blood-stained charming, and a rough wool cloak. Someone tosses you a sack of dried peas. Provisions, they say. It's the medieval equivalent of handing you a granola bar and saying good luck in Mordor. A friar announces that everyone must cleanse themselves before departure. You prepare for a bath. Instead, he dabs your forehead with holy water and tells you to confess everything you've ever done wrong. You confess, not because you're guilty, but because you think it'll earn you a smaller backpack. Spoiler, it doesn't. You spend the rest of the morning sewing a red cross onto your tunic. It's crooked. You pretend it's symbolic. By midday, the town square is full of excitement. Children are throwing onions at each other. A priest is blessing a wagon full of pigs. One nobleman is trying to load his falcon into a cart. No one asks why. There's music, drums, Bells again. Someone lights incense, and you instantly sneeze into your sleeve. Then the priest stands on a barrel and begins a speech. He speaks of the holy sepulchre, of infidels, of martyrdom, of paradise. You hear sand sweat and potential infection. Still the crowd cheers. You cheer too. It feels easier than explaining you're mostly here because your cousin dared you. The march begins tomorrow. Tonight is for prayer and last meals, and quietly panicking. You kneel at the altar, trying to focus. But your knees hurt, and someone next to you is whispering a prayer that sounds suspiciously like a shopping list. After dinner, stale bread and a turnip, you sit by the fire and try to remember what home smells like. Not this place, not wet stone and candle wax, but real home. Your mother's soup, your sister's soap, the leather of your father's belt, not in punishment, but polish. You miss it already. You curl up in your cloak. Outside, the wind howls. Jacques is snoring through his nose and probably into the next realm. You tell yourself this will be noble. You tell yourself this will be fine. You don't believe either. You close your eyes and dream of sunlight on stone streets, of sandals that fit of peace. But the bells will ring again, and when they do, you'll be one of them. A crusader, sort of. You wake up before the sun, which is already rude. But the real insult, someone is holding a blade over your head. Just a trim, they say. Lies. Because what follows isn't a haircut. It's a transformation, a ritual. And you're the sheep. The blade is dull. The monk's hand is steady. The bowl of holy water beside you is ominous. With each pass, tufts of your hair flutter to the ground, like pieces of identity you didn't consent to surrender. Soon your head is cold. Your scalp tingles. You look into a polished shield and hardly recognize yourself. Congratulations, you've been reborn as a crusader. Or at least you look the part. Next comes the armor. Or in your case, an ambitious pile of metal held together by guesswork and prayers. Chainmail, they tell you, is a gift from heaven. You suspect heaven didn't account for the weight. It takes 3 people to help you into it. First, the padded tunic. Heavy, scratchy. Already smells like someone else's sweat and regrets. Then the mail shirt, nearly 30 pounds of clinking links that dig into your shoulders like 1,000 tiny reminders that you are no longer built for comfort. Next, a leather belt to pull it all together, which it does. Too well. You can't breathe deeply, but that's not considered necessary. Then Greaves' gloves and a helmet. The helmet is your favorite part because it hides your face, which now looks like someone who desperately misses indoor plumbing. You glance around and realize no one else looks particularly heroic either. One man's armor is patched with string. Another has tied his gauntlets with chicken twine. Your own shoulder plate keeps sliding off whenever you lean left. Still, someone hands you a sword. It's long, heavy, and disturbingly sharp on both ends. Name it, Jacques says, holding his own sword like it's a pet falcon. Why, you ask? For honor, he replies. Mine's called repentance. You look at your blade. This one's named, oops, there's laughter. Then silence. Then the priest returns. He recites a blessing in Latin that sounds a lot like someone apologizing in advance. You try to focus on the words, but are distracted by the gnawing thought that you haven't yet learned how to use a sword. You're not alone. Half the group has never seen battle. One man is a baker. One was a poet. One ran a tavern, but only until he accidentally set it on fire and decided this was a good time for redemption. And here, you all are shaved, armored, armed, and increasingly hungry. Someone tries to teach you basic drills, how to block, how to lunge. You accidentally hit Jacques in the shin. He calls it divine punishment. You practice again, slower, sweatier, sloppier. You realize that real fighting is nothing like the paintings. There's no elegance, just heavy clanking chaos. That night, you sit in a field with your helmet in your lap. Your head feels like it belongs to someone else. Your body aches in places you didn't know existed. You miss your name, not the one they wrote on your tunic, the real one, the one your mother whispered when you couldn't sleep. Because here, no one calls you that. Here, you're just another blade in a sea of blades. Your identity flattened by chainmail and purpose. You lie back and look at the stars. They don't look like they care who wins. Jacques leans over. You think we'll be remembered. You think for a moment. Only if we lose interestingly. He laughs, then coughs, then snores. You close your eyes. Armor still, on sword at your side. Scalp, tingling from wind and doubt. Tomorrow, you march. Tomorrow, you'll be expected to swing that sword and mean it. But tonight, you're just a name you've nearly forgotten beneath a sky that doesn't. The first morning of the march begins with a bugle call that sounds less like a trumpet and more like someone gargling agony. You roll over, still wrapped in your itchy cloak, still sore from yesterday's crusader makeover, and are greeted by the unmistakable smell of boiled despair. Breakfast. You sit up slowly. Your chainmail shifts with a series of metallic groans, like a rusty choir of disapproval. Jacques, already awake, grins and hands you a small wooden bowl. Inside, 3 peas, half a carrot, and what might have once been a chunk of salted pork. Might. You can't tell anymore. The pork is the same color as the wood. This is the feast of the faithful, Jacques says, chewing enthusiastically. You try not to gag. The texture is somewhere between stale bread and old leather. The peas have all the flavor of wet gravel. The carrot is the best part, and that's saying something, because the carrot has a worm in it. You eat around it. You're not proud. This is what they're feeding the Holy Army. The priests call it humble. The knights call it manageable. Your stomach calls it a warning. You take a sip of water from your flask, only to realize the water is actually wine diluted with what tastes like pond memories. There's a floater. You close your eyes and pretend it's a herb. Marjorie, the cook's apprentice, walks by and waves. Save room for lunch, she chirps. We're drying some eels on the rocks. You briefly contemplate apostasy. The march begins shortly after. You're at the back of the line by design. You walk slowly, carefully. One wrong bounce of the chainmail, and you're back to bruised ribs. The sun climbs higher. Your stomach rumbles. Not out of hunger, but confusion. It seems to be questioning your life choices. Jacques offers you a chunk of hardtack from his pouch. Bite carefully, he warns. I broke a tooth last month. You bite and understand. This bread is not food. It's a medieval weapon. Crunching it sends shockwaves into your skull. You suck on it like a jawbreaker instead. The path winds through low hills and sun-beaten fields. Dust rises with every step. You're sweating through your tunic. You're certain your cloak now smells like 5 different saints, none of them clean. The noon rest brings no relief. The meal is a stew made from leftover breakfast and crushed hopes. You eat it anyway. Hunger is no longer a desire, it's a threat. Later that day, someone falls off their mule from dehydration. The medic, who used to be a blacksmith, offers two options: water from the ditch or an aggressive prayer. The man chooses prayer. He's still dizzy. By sundown, your belly feels like it's full of pebbles. You lie down on your back armor, off arms, sprawled, and wait, and wait. Your stomach groans loudly. So does Jacques. Then you both sit up at the same time and run sorry shuffle urgently to the nearest bushes. Let's just say the Holy Land isn't the only thing that's been purged. The crusade has officially claimed its first battlefield, your digestive tract. You return to camp with the dignity of a wet sock. Marjorie pats your back. Some people adjust by week 3, she says cheerfully. You vow to live just long enough to see week 4, if only out of spite. That night, you lie on your side, curled around your own misery, and listen to Jacques snore, and someone further off violently curse lentils. You're learning that glory doesn't come from the blade. It comes from surviving dinner. You're trying to sleep, not in a bed, not even on a mat. You're lying on a thin blanket spread over dry, cracked dirt somewhere between desert and abandoned battlefield. The night wind smells like salt sweat and horse. Your back hurts. Your armor is off, but its ghost lingers in your shoulders. And to make matters worse, someone nearby is whispering about betrayal. You turn your head slowly, hoping to fade into the shadows like a shy ghost. But your chainmail hood clinks ever so slightly. And now, Jacques knows you're awake. He leans over. Did you hear? He murmurs, eyes wide, with what can only be described as enthusiastic fear. They say someone in our ranks is a spy. You blink. For who, you whisper? Jacques shrugs. Everyone. Anyone. Maybe the Turks. Maybe the French. Maybe that angry goat from earlier. You're too tired to laugh, but you manage a soft groan. The fire has burned low, casting dancing shadows on the tents and wagons. Someone's playing a sad melody on a bone flute, which honestly should be a war crime. It sounds like grief and dental pain. In the distance, wolves howl. Or maybe that's the priest again. He's known to chant psalms in his sleep very loudly and usually off-key. You lie still listening. The desert is not quiet. It hisses with wind and whispers with creaking wheels and murmured prayers. Someone coughs violently. Another groans in their sleep. And then footsteps. You sit up instinctively, reaching for your sword, which you've lovingly wedged under your thigh, like a very heavy security blanket. A figure approaches the fire, hooded, limping. It's Brother Anselm, the monk who serves as our spiritual guide. He claims to have visions, mostly about fish. No one asks. He stares into the flames and mutters, "The angels are not happy tonight." Jacques whispers, "That means we're marching tomorrow." You sigh, because of course it does. Brother Anselm then pulls something from his robe, a turnip. He carves a cross into it with a spoon and places it beside the fire like a sacred offering. No one comments. This is now normal. You try to lie down again. Your stomach gurgles menacingly. Your feet are blistered. The soles of your sandals are nearly translucent, and your head is still itchy from yesterday's holy haircut. And still, you can't sleep. Because Jacques isn't done talking. They say a knight went missing last night, he whispers. Sir Baldwin just vanished. You frown. Maybe he deserted, Or maybe Jacques lowers his voice dramatically. He ascended. You stare. Or he fell in the latrine pit, you say flatly. Jacques poo. You have no imagination. You roll over and pull your cloak over your head. The wind nips at your ears. Sand blows into your nose. A bug crawls into your boot and refuses to come out. This is your life now. But eventually sleep comes. Not gently, but in little jerks and dips, like falling down a staircase made of fog. And in your dreams, you're not a crusader. You're home, in a real bed, with bread that's soft and water that doesn't sparkle with bacteria. You wake before dawn, feeling like your soul has only partially returned to your body. Jacques is already up. He's polishing his spoon, ready for another glorious day. You stare at him, then pull your cloak tighter. Because if there's anything this night has taught you, it's that the enemy isn't always across the battlefield. Sometimes he's snoring 2 feet away and naming turnips after saints. You wake with a start. The sun is barely rising, smearing pink and gold across the sky like a careless painter with a soft spot for dramatics. The desert is quiet except for the low murmur of men stretching, coughing, and wondering aloud if breakfast will be edible or vengeful. You reach for your armor and find nothing. Your heart skips. Your hands flail. The spot beside your bedroll where you always stack your gear holds only a patch of flattened dust and the vague smell of betrayal. Your chainmail, gone. Your breastplate, gone. Even your helmet, which you wedged under your saddle last night for safety, also gone. Only your boots remain. And somehow, even they feel a bit looser. Suspiciously so. You stand clutching your cloak around your under tunic like a scandalized pilgrim. Jacques blinks sleepily at you from across the fire pit, his spoon in one hand, a piece of salted eel in the other. They got you too, he asks, not alarmed, just impressed. You blink. You mean someone stole it? Jacques nods. Armor thieves. Real nuisance. Lost my greaves 3 weeks ago. Marched with 2 baking trays strapped to my thighs for days. You stare at him. Did no one try to stop them? He shrugs. Hard to catch someone who knows how to carry 50 pounds of guilt and iron at full sprint. And just like that, it clicks. This isn't just a group of misfits wandering toward the Holy Land with prayers and potatoes. This is an ecosystem. A living, groaning, creaking marketplace of bartering theft, backdoor deals, and miraculous disappearances. Welcome to the Crusader economy. You begin investigating. Your first stop is the camel guy. No one knows his real name. He owns 3 camels, 2 of which are probably stolen. He also sells things that mysteriously tend to go missing the night before he offers them at a generous discount. You approach his camp. There, hanging from a wooden rack, like freshly cleaned fish, your helmet, your breastplate, your chainmail. He smiles. You looking to buy something? You narrow your eyes. That's mine. He nods cheerfully. It can be. Jacques catches up to you, munching on a fig that no one saw him buy. Haggling is holy, he mutters helpfully. You consider your options. You have 2 silver coins, a pouch of rosemary for the fleas, and a set of undergarments that smell like dried sin. The merchant eyes the rosemary. Throw in the fig, he says, pointing at Jacques. Jacques hides the fig behind his back. I've already bonded with it. Eventually, you trade your belt buckle and half your dignity to get your armor back. It smells faintly of someone else's sweat now. You decide not to ask. Back in camp, you suit up in silence. The armor feels heavier, more suspicious, like it's judging you for not guarding it better. Around you, similar transactions are happening. One knight is bartering for his missing saddle with a song and a poem. Another is trying to buy back a tunic he swore he never lost. The cook is selling spoons with initials scratched out. No one questions where they came from. You begin to understand. This isn't a holy march. It's a slow-moving bazaar, held together by desperation, delusion, and duct tape, if it had existed yet. There are rules, of course, just not useful ones. Stealing is frowned upon unless you do it politely. Trading is sacred unless it involves goats. And if you get caught, just blame it on divine redistribution. Works every time. By midday, your armor is back where it belongs. You feel slightly victorious, slightly filthy. Jacques claps you on the back. You're learning. You nod. I miss home. He shrugs. Home doesn't have camel markets. You glance at the sun. The march will begin soon. Your gear smells like someone else's journey. Your sandals are a bit looser. You're not sure you trust anyone anymore. But you're also strangely prepared. You've survived your first encounter with the underground economy of the pious. And tomorrow, you'll sleep with your helmet on, even if it crushes your ears. Dawn arrives like a reluctant apology. Pale light spills across the dry hills, illuminating tents, tired eyes, and the occasional goat that absolutely does not belong to anyone but is always nearby. Today is different. Today your sword gets baptized. Yes, that's a thing. Brother Anselm, our fire-eyed monk with a fondness for turnips and divine monologues, has declared that all weapons must be blessed before the army moves forward. Steel may pierce flesh, he says dramatically, but only faith pierces evil. Jacques whispers, so why not just throw crosses at people? You hush him, mostly because you want to hear where this is going. The ceremony takes place in a dry riverbed, lined with stones, and a single smoldering fire pit. There's a wooden table where swords are laid out, rows and rows, of them glinting in the light like a choir with sharp opinions. You're instructed to clean your blade first. Yours, still affectionately named Oops, has a bit of rust and a bit of mystery goo from last week's rabbit stew incident. You wipe it down with a scrap of linen and pray it doesn't smell like regret. Then comes the anointing. Brother Anselm takes a cup of water mixed with ash and a sprig of rosemary and splashes it across each weapon. In nomine patris, he intones, soaking the blade like he's watering a stubborn herb. Jacques' sword. Repentance absorbs the water dramatically. Probably symbolic. Yours just drips. Next you kneel. This part isn't strictly required, but it looks impressive, and you suspect the painter following the bishop around is sketching. You want to look holy, even if your knees are in a puddle. Brother Anselm places his hand on your shoulder. May this blade serve truth, justice, and no selfish desire. You nod solemnly. He pauses. Also, try not to hit your own men this time. You nod less solemnly. Then comes the philosophy. Because a baptized sword isn't just a weapon, it's an extension of virtue, a symbol of righteousness, a theological object with an edge. You're told that using your blade without cause is sinful. Using it with cause but too enthusiastically is also sinful. Killing in anger, sin. Killing too calmly. Probably suspicious. You raise your hand. What about scaring people with it? Brother Anselm replies, intent matters. You lower your hand. Oops shimmers faintly, probably judging you. The rest of the morning is a blur of chance blessings and awkward silences. One man tries to name his blade salvation. Another picks mild discomfort. The bishop tells him to try again. Afterward, you practice drawing your sword quickly, without slicing your thigh. Results mixed, but as you move, you begin to feel it, this odd connection to the blade. Not reverence, not romance, just understanding. This thing could end someone, and yet it was dipped in water and prayers like a child at a baptism. You can't decide if that's comforting or horrifying. Later, Jacques challenges you to a mock duel. You agree under the condition that no spleens are injured. You clash gently, cautiously. The sound of metal meeting metal echoes across the camp like bells with bad timing. When you finally lower your weapons panting and dusty Brother Anselm nods. "Let your blade be your conscience," he says. Jacques replies. Then mine is confused and slightly sarcastic. That night, you lie by the fire, Oops resting beside you like a loyal pet with trauma. You think about what it means to wield power in the name of belief, what it means to kill righteously, what it means to pretend any of this makes sense, and you drift off not sure if you feel holier or just heavier. But one thing is clear. Tomorrow you march with a blade baptized by ash sweat and ambiguity. And that's the most honest thing you've done all week. The heat is not metaphorical today. It's not the kind of warmth you write songs about. It's the kind that makes your eyeballs feel poached and your brain hum like a broken church bell. The desert stretches ahead in endless beige waves, daring you to keep walking. And you are so thirsty. You've been marching for hours. Your lips are cracked. Your tongue feels like it's been sandpapered and then rolled in flour. Every step kicks up dust that finds its way into your nose, your mouth, and the deepest recesses of your dignity. Your water skin empty. You squeezed the last drop 2 hours ago. You'd give up your armor, your sandals, and possibly Jacques for a sip of something cool. Speaking of Jacques, he's beside you, licking the condensation off a spoon. You watch in horror. Does that help? Emotionally, yes, he says. Physically, no. You trudge forward past sunburned knights and coughing pilgrims. Somewhere, someone is singing a hymn about divine rivers. You silently hope they choke on their metaphor. And then, like a miracle, a barrel, a wooden cask tied to the back of a creaking wagon, guarded by 2 novices who look about as intimidating as bread rolls. You approach, eyes wide, hope fluttering. "Is that water?" you croak. The taller novice shakes his head. "Better." You blink. What's better than water? He lifts the lid. Inside, a murky, slightly yellowish liquid that smells like incense, copper, and regret. "Nock thon," he whispers reverently. "Holy water." You pause. From where? The chapel basin, blessed by 3 bishops and 1 slightly confused deacon. You glance around. There's no stream nearby, no wells, just rock's heat and the smell of someone's feet boiling inside their boots. You sigh. "Can I drink it?" He hesitates. Technically, no. Spiritually, absolutely. Jacques appears behind you. "What's the worst that could happen, dysentery?" you say. He nods. That's also spiritual, if you think about it. You stare at the barrel. The water stares back. You dip your cup. It's warm. It tastes faintly metallic. And your entire mouth now smells like myrrh. But it's wet. You down the cup. The novices cheer. Jacques toasts you with his spoon. A nearby knight joins in, demanding his share. Within minutes, the barrel is half empty, and several soldiers are discussing whether this counts as communion. You feel mildly better, also mildly tingly, Someone suggests rationing the holy water. Someone else starts filling their flask. A monk faints dramatically. Someone cries. Brother Anselm arrives just in time to declare the entire barrel miraculously available. He sprinkles more ash into it and claims the new batch can heal ulcers. You do not test this. As the sun begins to dip, the mood shifts. The heat lingers, but now your thirst is bearable, sort of. You still dream of rivers of wine jugs of icy springs that don't smell like sanctified pennies. But you've learned something today. Desperation will make anything sacred, even a barrel of hand-washed blessings. That night, you lie beneath a half-collapsed tent, your stomach gurgling in Latin, your breath smelling like a church aisle. Jacques is still sipping his spoon. You ask, "Would you drink it again?" He replies, "Would I not?" You roll onto your side. Sleep finds you slowly, like a cautious messenger. You dream of fountains. You wake to the sound of someone vomiting beside the camels. You sigh. Back to reality. The path ahead shimmers like liquid glass under the sun. You've walked all morning, your boots squeaking with sweat, your chainmail sagging like a regret you can't take off. The road coils through dry hills, and everyone is too tired to complain, except Jacques. Jacques never runs out of breath or bad ideas. "Do you believe in immortal nights?" he asks, chewing something unidentifiable and suspiciously crunchy. You glance at him. Is this a riddle? No, no. Real nights. The kind who've been in every crusade. They say one's in this camp. You snort. And does he sparkle in sunlight? Jacques ignores your sarcasm and points to a ragged tent, pitched alone near a dried-up olive grove. They say he was at Antioch, an acre. And somehow, Alexandria, even though that wasn't technically part of it. You roll your eyes, but your curiosity tingles. After lunch, a hard crust of bread and something called pilgrim mash that tastes like sadness and time you wander over. The tent is patched with different fabrics, some European, some Levantine, and one suspiciously patterned like a curtain from a brothel. A flag droops above it, unrecognizable and sun-bleached. You clear your throat. "Hello." From the shadows, a voice answers. Gruff. Dusty. "Who disturbs my nap?" You peek inside. There he is. Old. Worn. Sitting cross-legged on a threadbare rug, with a goblet in one hand and a dagger in the other. His armor is mismatched. His beard is braided with beads. His face is more scar than skin. He smells like myrrh and roasted garlic. You found him, the not dead but definitely done knight. He looks up and waves the dagger lazily. "Come to see the ghost have you." You sit. Slowly. He tells you his name was Sir Roderick of Brabant. But now people call him the one who won't die. Not because he's immortal. Just stubborn. He's fought in 5 crusades. Maybe 6. He can't remember anymore. He says every battle starts the same, dust shouting bad breath. And everyone ends with people looting boots. You ask why he keeps coming back. He laughs. Because no one told me how to stop. He's had every disease you've heard of, and several you haven't. Malaria, dysentery, arrow in the leg syndrome. One time, he was mistaken for a saint and kissed by 47 pilgrims in one day. Now he mostly drinks and mutters. You listen as he recounts the time he got lost for a month in Anatolia, sustained only by dried figs and passive-aggressive goats, or the siege where his entire unit abandoned him, and he held the line by yelling insults in 7 languages. He's funny, sharp, tired. Every time I almost died, he says someone needed help moving a body or fixing a saddle. No rest for the almost dead. He shows you a map. It's hand-drawn, patched, crumpled. Places are marked with skulls, stars, or little notes, like "Don't trust cheese here." You stay for hours. When you finally rise to leave, he hands you a small token, a worn coin with no face, no name, just a tiny carved sword. For luck, he says, or for confusing customs officials. Back in camp, Jacques is waiting. Well, he asks. You nod. He's real. Told you. And very, very strange. That, too. That night, you lie on your back, fingering the coin, wondering what immortality really means. Not living forever, just surviving long enough to become a rumor. Sir Roderick isn't a legend. He's a warning, and part of you already understands. Because you're starting to forget which day it is, and you're starting to wonder how many more it'll take before you start braiding your beard and talking to ghosts. It's sunrise again, which means you're back to walking. Your feet hurt, your thighs burn, your armor creaks with every step like it's sighing in solidarity. You pass the time counting rocks that look vaguely like bread. You reach 12 before Jacques interrupts. They've brought out the relics, he says, nudging you. You blink. The what now? He points ahead. At the front of the convoy, there's a small cart decorated with flowers, candles, and far too much enthusiasm for this hour. Atop it rests a velvet-covered box glimmering in the early light. A cleric walks beside it, fanning flies away with a feather that might once have belonged to a swan or a pigeon. Hard to say. What is it, you ask? Jacques grins. A tantique, holy relic. Today, we march under the protection of Saint Wilhelmina's finger. You pause. Her finger. He nods. Mummified. Still smells like roses, they say. You don't ask how they know. The relic is revered, worshipped, guarded. At rest stops, people line up to kiss the silver box. Some weep, others sing. A few try to sneak in second kisses, which causes mild chaos. You're skeptical, not because you don't believe, but because you're already running a low-grade fever and would prefer not to swap pilgrim germs with a severed digit. Still, the pressure mounts. Brother Anselm catches your eye. Have you paid your respect? You nod vaguely, in spirit. He frowns. You shuffle forward. By the time you reach the front, the box glows faintly with oil incense and the lingering moisture of dozens of devout lips. You hesitate. Then lean in. Just one quick peck on the edge of the silver casing. Not even the finger itself. Very respectful. Very cautious. And then you feel it. A tingle. Not spiritual. Nasal. By nightfall, you're sniffling. Your eyes itch. Your lips feel like they've been kissed by a plague in slow motion. Jacques sits beside you at the fire, munching on something unrecognizable. You okay? You sniffle. I think the saint gave me something. He raises an eyebrow. Enlightenment? No, you rasp. Fever. He pats your shoulder. Could be divine testing. You reach for your water skin. Could be strep. The clerics claim it's a miracle. You were touched, spiritually inflamed. They bring you lavender oil and prayers. You ask for garlic and a nap. By morning, your lips are swollen. Your head is throbbing. And someone has started a rumor that you had a vision. You didn't. Unless you count the fever dream where Saint Wilhelmina danced across your belly demanding a new shrine. Marjorie brings you soup and mutters, "You should have kissed the back of the box." Too late now. The relic is being packed away, headed to the next village to be kissed anew by the hopeful, the devoted, and the immunocompromised. You lie flat on your back, watching the stars blink overhead like indifferent fireflies. Your lips throb, your faith wavers, your stomach makes a noise that might be heresy, and yet part of you understands. People kiss the relic not for healing, but for belonging, for proof that they were part of something bigger than the blisters and the marching and the soup that smells like laundry water. You sigh. You're a crusader now. You have the fever to prove it. You're lost. Not a few paces off the road lost. Not, wait, wasn't that tree here before lost? No. You are capital L lost. The kind of lost that makes you doubt gravity, geography, and God. The morning began with confidence. Brother Anselm stood atop a hill at sunrise, holding a large parchment like it contained divine secrets. "This is our new map," he declared, flanked by two squires holding lanterns they didn't need. Drawn by Brother Hilarius of Montfort, a visionary. You squint. The map looks less like cartography and more like a child's dream during a thunderstorm. It has mountains, stars, a smiling lion, and a large goose labeled the Northern Sign. Nothing is to scale. Nothing is labeled in Latin. One river appears to loop in a perfect heart shape. Jacques tilts his head. Did he draw this from memory, Brother Anselm beams? No. From revelation. Ah, revelation. Nothing says good sense of direction like being half blind, mildly prophetic, and possibly drunk. And so, with full faith and half logic, the march began. You walked south or east, possibly west. No one agrees anymore. The sun is overhead. It's always overhead. You haven't seen a landmark in days, unless you count the Goose Rock. You've passed the Goose Rock 3 times. Today, a knight threw a tantrum and accused the wind of betrayal. Another insisted that a bush looked like the Virgin Mary and should be consulted. Someone proposed drawing a new map by watching how ants moved. You suggested asking the locals. There are none. The last village you passed was 2 days ago, and even then, the only advice they gave was turn around, which was not, in Brother Anselm's opinion, theologically helpful. So now you march into hills, out of valleys, through fields that look suspiciously familiar. One pilgrim swears she saw her own footprints from yesterday. Brother Anselm insists that confusion is part of the divine test. Even Moses wandered, he says. Jacques whispers, Moses also had a burning bush. We've only got irritated camels. By dusk, morale dips. Blisters swell. A knight breaks down and tries to eat a wax candle. You, meanwhile, are rationing raisins and wondering if heaven accepts complaints in writing. At camp, you gather around a fireless pit. Too tired to eat. Too blistered to move. A boy is crying over a missing sandal. The baker is muttering at his shadow. The horses have started walking in small circles, possibly trying to rebel. Then someone suggests asking the angels. And weirdly, people agree. You lie back and stare at the sky. Stars blink like distant promises. You wonder if angels actually do navigation, or if they too use prophetic goose maps. Jacques appears beside you. If we keep going, we'll find Jerusalem. You nod. Or we'll invent it. He grins. Either way, that's faith. You both fall asleep beside a bush that might be holy. Or just tired. Tomorrow, You'll walk again, not because you know where you're going, but because stopping feels worse. Because sometimes the way forward isn't about direction. It's about momentum and blisters. Lots of blisters. You're on a horse. Technically, emotionally, you're on a medieval torture device wrapped in leather and false promises. The saddle is wooden because luxury is a sin, and it's been rubbing your inner thighs for 6 hours. The sun is hot. Your cloak sticks to your back. Your legs ache in places you didn't know could ache. And let's be honest, your backside, a battlefield. Welcome to Crusader Equestrianism, where the ride breaks you. Your horse, a dignified creature named Hugh, you didn't name him, is surprisingly gentle. But his gait, unforgiving. Every step feels like penance. Your teeth rattle, your bones complain, and your rear end has begun drafting a formal letter of resignation. You try shifting left. No good. You try right. Worse. You attempt standing in the stirrups, like knights do in tapestries. You fall back down, hard. Jacques rides beside you upright and suspiciously chipper. Isn't this noble? He chirps. Like St. George, you glare. St. George probably had a cushion. He laughs. Cushions are for heretics. You bite your tongue. And not just because it distracts from the pain. The path winds through a dry plain. Dust kicks up with every step. Your lips are chapped. Your armor clinks. Your thighs burn like they've been personally cursed. Every hour someone else gives up and walks. You consider joining them. But walking means new blisters. Riding means the same blisters, just deeper. Brother Anselm rides ahead on a mule named Gloria Dei. He sings psalms with dramatic vibrato, occasionally pausing to rebuke the mule for leaning into temptation, which is how he describes veering off the path for grass. You pass a group of flagellants pilgrims who whip themselves for God. You nod in sympathy. They nod back. Mutual suffering. At lunch, you dismount slowly, carefully, reverently. Like your lower half has become a sacred relic no one may touch. You sit on a rock, instantly regret it. Jacques offers a flask. You take a sip. It's wine. It burns slightly. So does your soul. I miss chairs, you whisper. I miss not knowing what a saddle sore feels like. Jacques replies, after lunch, someone proposes padding their saddle with extra cloth. Another knight scoffs, says, real warriors ride raw. That same knight falls off an hour later and refuses to get back up. The afternoon passes in slow, bumpy agony. Your spine curves into a question mark. Your thighs feel like melted wax. Your tailbone is beginning to hallucinate, but something shifts. You stop resisting. You surrender. You and the saddle become one, a hybrid being fueled by dust numbness and sheer spiritual survival. You're not riding anymore. You're being ridden by the path itself, and it's oddly peaceful until Hugh sneezes and jolts you back into pain. At camp, you slide off with the grace of a wounded duck. You limp to your bedroll and collapse like an injured scroll. Someone offers ointment. You whisper, yes, like it's a prayer. Jacques limps over. Same time tomorrow, you groan, but nod, because now you understand. This isn't about reaching Jerusalem. This is about enduring, through hunger, through heat, and now, through equestrian humility. The camp is tense. There's a feeling in the air, sharp electric, as if even the flies are holding their breath. The priest walks faster. The horses stamp nervously. Someone sharpening a sword like it insulted his mother. Battle is coming. You don't know when, or where, or why, but rumors have been circling like vultures. An enemy patrol was spotted near the hills. A caravan was attacked. Someone claims to have heard distant war drums, though that may have just been Jacques trying to fix his saddle rhythmically. This morning, the bishop arrives, which is never a good sign. He wears ceremonial armor, gleaming gold-trimmed and completely impractical. He's flanked by two squires who hold his cape so it doesn't drag in the mud. His helm is polished to the point of divine reflection. He looks like a metaphor. Today, he booms, we purify ourselves for the fight. You were hoping for a bath. Instead, you get a blessing. All soldiers must gather in lines, ranked by height awkwardness, and whether their armor still smells like wet sheep. You stand beside Jacques, who's humming something between a hymn and a drinking song. The bishop walks down the row, sprinkling holy water. He mutters in Latin. His assistant chants. A child with a drum provides rhythm though offbeat. You close your eyes as the water hits your forehead. It's cold, bracing, sharp. For a moment, you feel weightless, clean, ready. Your sword, oops, is also blessed. You're told it now carries divine purpose. You briefly consider renaming it, but oops, but holy feels like a mouthful. The ceremony ends with a psalm and a warning. Fight not with hatred, but with righteousness. Jacques whispers, so aim carefully, righteous. Then you whisper back, more or less in the direction of the enemy. You're nervous. You haven't actually fought anyone yet. Your training was minimal. Your duels were playful. And you're still not entirely sure how to hold your shield without it sliding into your armpit. But orders are given. And so, within the hour, you march. You reach a narrow valley by mid-morning. Dust swirls in the air. The hills feel too quiet. Birds have stopped singing. Even the goats look nervous. Then it begins. A distant shout, a horn, a sudden thundering of hooves, chaos, knights roar, archers fire. People sprint in 5 directions, none of them correct. You raise your shield. You draw oops. You try to remember which way is stab and which way is don't die. You don't see the enemy, but you do see Jacques charging forward with his sword raised, shouting a prayer and tripping over his own feet. And then pain, sharp, sudden. Your side explodes with heat. You stumble backward. You fall. Your shield flies one way, your breath another. You hit the ground hard. Blink. Someone is shouting your name. Someone else is apologizing in French. You look down. There's blood, not yours, thankfully. Just a cut across your side. Deep enough to sting. Shallow enough to be survivable. The edge of your tunic is slashed. Beside you, Sir Henry is panicking. I'm so sorry, he gasps. I thought you were one of them. You groan. I have a red cross on my chest. So do they. Sometimes you grit your teeth. So this is how it starts. Blessed by a bishop. Cut by your own side. 5 minutes of combat. 1 scar. 0 dignity. You crawl behind a rock. You press cloth to the wound. You mutter things that may or may not be considered heretical. Jacques finds you later. Heroic, he says. Truly, I got stabbed by Henri, you growl. Ah, he nods. The bishop says, all suffering is holy. Tell that to my spleen. That night, you lie on your back, bandaged and bitter. The stars blink overhead. A nurse hums quietly. The fire crackles with the sort of warmth that only comes after near death and soup. You wonder if the blessing worked, or if the sword just needed a sacrifice. You drift into sleep a little bruised, a little wiser. And tomorrow, you're investing in identification flags, big ones. You're healing, sort of. Your side still throbs. The bandages itch, and every time you sneeze, it feels like your rib cage is threatening to file for divorce. But you're alive. You're upright. And you've graduated from battlefield casualty to limping spiritual consultant, which mostly means people leave you alone unless they want advice on how not to get stabbed by friends. You spend your mornings by the chapel tent. It's quiet here, peaceful. You sip broth. You listen to Brother Gregorius read scripture in a voice so slow it could ferment milk. Sometimes you help polish helmets or swat flies off the communion bread. It's nice, until the incident with the book. It begins innocently. Brother Gregorius is reading from the Psalms when his voice falters. He flips a page, frowns, flips again, then stops. He coughs. You glance over. He's staring at something in the binding, and then gently, carefully, like he's parting the Red Sea, he opens the spine of the holy book and pulls out a dagger, small, slim, perfectly hidden. The room is silent. Brother Gregorius looks like he just found a scorpion in his prayer shawl. You both stare at it, then at each other, then back at the dagger. You speak first. Well, that's not from the Gospels. He mutters, "This is not mine." Naturally, the camp erupts. The bishop is called. The dagger is examined. The book is scrutinized for other signs of moral decay. One page is smudged with what looks suspiciously like jam. Within hours, a new decree is issued. All clergy must present their books for inspection. Publicly, loudly. Turns out, it's not the only book with secrets. Another monk is found with a tiny flask of wine tucked into the spine of Leviticus. A friar from Normandy has scribbled sarcastic commentary in the margins of Revelation. And one suspiciously muscular deacon has carved out space in his Bible for a tiny travel-sized hammer. You never know. He shrugs. Brother Anselm is appalled. These are sacred texts. You nod. With surprisingly flexible storage options, Jacques, of course, thinks it's hilarious. The Book of Concealed Weaponry. He declares a lesser-known epistle. Whispers spread fast. Suddenly, everyone is watching the clergy with new eyes. Does that priest walk with a limp, or is he hiding a slingshot under his robe? Is that a prayer scroll, or a list of enemy names? Mistrust blooms like mildew. Brother Gregorius resigns from morning readings. His voice trembles now. His hands shake. You sit beside him one evening, trying to be reassuring. Maybe it was planted, you suggest. Maybe it was providence, he replies. You blink. Wait, you mean? He shrugs. Sometimes the Lord works through fear. That night you see him sharpening a spoon, just in case. By the end of the week, a new rule is posted. No concealed items in devotional materials. Violators will receive penance and suspicion. You sleep with one eye open and your psalter closed, because faith may move mountains, but apparently it can also conceal steel. You've made it to a market, a pilgrim's market to be precise. One of those pop-up trading havens that springs up near holy routes and battlefield camps, half sanctuary, half carnival, fully questionable. The signs appeared first. Hand-painted boards nailed to trees promising things like authentic relics and holy beverages. One sign simply reads, "Blessings." 3 for 1, which seems like a theological bargain. Brother Anselm declared the entire operation highly suspect. So, of course, you and Jacques went immediately. The path winds through tents, flapping in the wind stalls, made of mismatched cloth and repurposed wagon wheels. Somewhere a flute plays out of tune. Somewhere else someone is loudly arguing about the fairness of divine discounts. You're hit with smells, spices, animals roasted things you hope were once alive. It's chaos, but it's got heart, and dirt, and scams. First stop relics. You browse a table labeled Pieces of the True Cross. There are many. Jacques holds one up. If this is all from one cross, that thing was the size of a cathedral. The seller frowns. Miracles of multiplication. Next to it, St. Peter's toenail partial. It's in a jar. It looks suspiciously like a walnut. You move on. Another stall sells Tears of the Virgin Mary, carefully bottled in tiny glass vials. You ask, how do you know they're hers? The seller deadpans. They were wept into this very sand, blessed by the wind, and extracted with holy tweezers. You blink. Jacques buys 2. You pass a booth selling indulgences, written ones, pre-written ones. Buy 3 sins, get 1 forgiven free, the sign proclaims. You wonder if that's how math worked at the Council of Claremont. Nearby, a boy is selling angel-boiled eggs. He claims they were cooked using fire from heaven. You ask for a taste. They're cold, undercooked, and possibly duck. You eat it anyway. You're starving. Next stall, holy water infused with rose petals and allegedly blessed by a monk who once saw a vision of Saint Sebastian riding a dolphin. You pass on the water, but take a pamphlet. The art is excellent. By midday, the crowd thickens. Pilgrims haggle over Saint-themed souvenirs, sandals, bones, tiny swords. A knight is arguing loudly about the price of a genuine shroud. A merchant shouts, 1 dinar for a splinter of St. Paul's walking staff. Smells like wisdom. You laugh until you smell it. It does smell like wisdom. Jacques whispers, it's lavender. They're cheating with lavender. Meanwhile, Brother Anselm stands in the middle of the chaos, clutching his prayer beads like a lifeline. This is heresy, he hisses. Commerce masquerading as faith. You hand him a honey cake. He takes it. You keep walking. Because it's not all mockery. Some pilgrims come here with hope, not gold. Some buy trinkets because they miss home or because they believe. Some wear amulets not to ward off evil, but to carry a piece of the journey with them. And some, like, you are just here for the roasted onions on sticks. That evening, back at camp, you and Jacques unpack your treasures. 1 blessed spoon of St. Lawrence bent, 2 vials of questionable tears, a candle that smells like damp bread, and a pamphlet featuring a beaming angel riding a goat. You light the candle. It flickers bravely, and you sleep with it nearby, comforted not by its truth, but by its presence. Faith, after all, isn't always about facts. Sometimes it's about holding on to something, even if it's just a spoon that's been blessed, bent, and slightly burnt. You arrive at Jerusalem. It doesn't look like a vision. Not at first. There's no golden aura, no choir of angels, no glowing stairway to heaven, flanked by incense and doves with professional lighting. It's dusty. The walls are high, weathered. The gates are guarded. The streets inside buzz with people, languages, arguments, merchants hawking pomegranates, soldiers polishing spears, and someone yelling about fish. You're overwhelmed. You don't know what you expected. something holier, something more radiant, something that didn't involve stepping over donkey droppings. You stop in the middle of the road, breathing hard. Jacques nudges you. "We made it," he whispers. You nod, but something inside you doesn't settle. You pass through narrow streets. You see where pilgrims kneel, eyes closed, hands trembling. You pass churches built on older churches, domes shining under the heat shadows, long and humming with memory. But it still doesn't hit you. Not until you're alone. You slip away in the late afternoon, past the tourists, the traders, the tired horses, past the busy chapels and into a quieter alley where light filters in through lattice windows and the only sound is the echo of your own breath. You sit, you close your eyes, and you remember. You remember the mud of France, the days of marching, the nights of cold soup, the comrades you lost, the ones who got lost on purpose, the lies, the miracles, the letters, the laughs, the blessed sword named Oops. You remember the pain, not the battles, the rubbing, the hunger, the long silences, the moment you realized the cross on your tunic was no protection from a sword or the sun or your own doubt, and you cry. Not because you're in Jerusalem, but because you finally stopped running, stopped hurting, stopped pretending. You're here, and that means something, even if you don't know what yet. When you return to the group, you don't speak. Jacques looks at you and says nothing. He just hands you a fig. It's slightly bruised. It's perfect. Later that night, the bishop preaches under the stars. He talks about glory, conquest, eternal reward. You half listen. You think more about the fig and how quiet the alley was and how much you missed the silence. You lie on your bedroll staring at the sky. And now, at the end of it all, you finally understand. This was never about Jerusalem. It was about the way here, the people, the bruises, the jokes, the detours, the bandaged side, the spoon, the long hours of being human and tired and foolish and faithful all at once. And maybe that's what holiness really is. A long road with broken shoes, dusty friends, and a fig at the end. And so your journey ends, not with trumpets, not with revelations carved in stone, but with the quiet ache in your legs, the dust on your sleeves, the weight of a story lived not told. You've walked across centuries tonight, alongside knights who forgot their prayers, bishops who blessed too much water, monks with daggers in their books, and pilgrims who cried not for the city, but for the selves they left behind. You've eaten fig-scented hopes, slept beside doubtful faith, bought tiny spoons from suspicious saints, and maybe you realized that the road itself was always more sacred than the destination. Because history isn't clean, it's muddy and sore-footed and surprisingly funny. It forgets names, but remembers smells. It judges your posture, your shoes, your belt, and sometimes forgives your ignorance with a wink and a badly boiled egg. So now, as the stars climb high and your breath slows, let go of the weight. Let your hands relax. Let the air around you soften. There's no crusade here tonight. No relics to buy. No flags to carry. No cause to question. Only this small, warm moment. Just you and the quiet and the strange, sweet company of the past. If you've enjoyed this slow stumble through time, if it made you smile or sigh or feel a little less alone in your bed, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. But only if you truly find comfort in what we share. Leave a comment too if you're still awake. Tell me what time it is where you are. Tell me your favorite relic, and now rest. That's the story. For tonight may your dreams be filled with wonder and peace. Good night. Hello, everyone. Tonight we're going to take a slow, gentle walk into the steamy, fascinating, and occasionally fragrant world of Roman public baths. Spoiler alert, it's going to be quite an experience, not because of swords or gladiators, but because Roman relaxation might be slightly different from what you're used to. Before you get comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Let's find out how many time zones we're connecting tonight. Now dim, the lights maybe turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive at the gates of the Thermae just after dawn. You've heard about the famous Roman spa experience, cleansing, refreshing, and social. You even brought your best linen towel neatly folded in your satchel. In every way, you're prepared. Yet the aroma reaches you before the door does. It's not an unpleasant smell, just strong and unusual. A bold mixture of whetstone, steam sulfur, and minerals. The guidebook mentioned therapeutic springs, so perhaps that's it. The doorman, wearing a tunic that has seen many days, doesn't look up as you enter. He simply nods lazily, gesturing toward the entrance. You take it as a silent welcome, or perhaps polite indifference. Inside the building is enormous. High ceilings arch gracefully overhead. Light filters softly through thin windows, casting ripples over tiled floors. Steam curls gently in the air. It feels impressive, historic, and strangely humid, like stepping gently into another era. You're directed toward the apoditerium, the changing room. Just through there, someone offers, quietly nudging you gently forward. You follow the damp footprints ahead. The changing room is bustling with activity and filled with quiet conversations. People everywhere, some preparing towels, others carefully adjusting sandals. Your modern instincts look for a locker, but instead there are simple cubby holes and a bored-looking attendant keeping watch. You find a spot, unfold your towel with quiet dignity, and avoid unnecessary eye contact. The walls feel cool against your shoulders as you quickly and modestly change. It's an exercise in humility, every movement careful and discreet. A friendly-looking gentleman nearby, glistening with some herbal oil, nods politely. You offer a small, polite smile in return. Once ready, you follow the gentle flow of other bathers into the next area. No maps, no instructions, just calm guidance through shared understanding. You hope you're following correctly, feeling more like a curious visitor than anything else. The next chamber is pleasantly warm enough to coax a gentle sheen of sweat onto your forehead. Above the archway, faded red letters spell out tepidarium, a warm room designed to ease you into relaxation. You step carefully onto the mosaic floor, appreciating its artistic patterns, but mindful of its slipperiness. Your foot slides slightly, but you recover gracefully, hoping no one noticed. Nearby, a man clears his throat with vigor. You politely turn toward a basin of water, dipping your fingers cautiously into it. The water is lukewarm and slightly viscous, unexpected but harmless. Someone behind you sneezes loudly, startling you momentarily. You glance over your shoulder. They offer an apologetic smile before resuming a conversation about daily life. You move on calmly. The steam thickens slightly as you enter another room. The air feels heavy, filled with quiet murmurs and gentle laughter. You're reminded that this is part of the communal experience, connecting gently with others through shared relaxation. In a quiet moment, you press your palm gently against the warm, smooth wall, finding comfort in its solidity. A slow drip of water touches your shoulder. You decide not to look up calmly, moving forward instead. You pass rows of reclining bathers, relaxed and half dozing. A child carefully practicing juggling figs, and a man softly singing a Greek melody echoing beautifully through the space. Eventually, you reach the caldarium. You pause. Here the heat is strong and noticeable, real warmth wrapping around you, inviting yet challenging. It carries a subtle aroma of charcoal and citrus, intense but intriguing. You step carefully onto the heated floor, feeling its warmth beneath your feet. It's hotter than you expected, enough to make you hesitate briefly. But you're here for the experience. You're here to relax. Gathering your resolve, you take another gentle step forward, ready for whatever comes next. The heat is relentless. It coils around your limbs, gently but firmly, like a warm blanket you can't remove. You hesitate at the edge of the caldarium toes, curled cautiously, debating internally if this qualifies as relaxation or simply cultural endurance. Someone nudges past you, murmuring an apology, softened by a mouthful of dried fruit. You step aside awkwardly, your bare shoulder brushing briefly against theirs, unexpected yet harmless contact that leaves you slightly uncomfortable. And there it is, again, the heat, the oppressive weight of hot steam pressing insistently against your lungs. You briefly consider retreat, but pride, a stubborn yet understandable pride, keeps your feet planted. You venture deeper into the caldarium, stepping carefully onto slick tiles, whose mosaics depicting playful dolphins now seem humorously ironic. At the center, a large marble basin holds steaming water, shimmering invitingly yet intimidatingly. Bathers circle it lazily, dipping hands and splashing necks seemingly unaffected by temperatures you hesitate even to approach. You cautiously test the water with your fingertips, quickly withdrawing as you adjust to the heat. Beside you, an elderly woman plunges her whole arm into the basin, sighing with satisfaction. She catches your surprised expression and offers a reassuring smile, one that kindly acknowledges your hesitation. The chamber echoes softly with quiet murmurs and occasional laughter muted by humidity. It's as though everyone here shares an unspoken secret about relaxation you haven't yet discovered. Suddenly, a firm voice cuts through the murmurs. "Please stay still," instructs an attendant behind you. You turn carefully as gentle yet assured hands guide you to a low marble bench. Before fully comprehending what's happening, you're seated in front of a man partially obscured by steam. He holds a bucket of warm, cloudy water and a scraping tool called a strigil, used traditionally for cleansing and refreshing the skin. "Relax," he says reassuringly, sensing your hesitation. "This won't hurt." You're not entirely convinced, but you nod politely. With practiced ease, he begins applying scented oil to your skin, smooth, lightly fragrant, carrying hints of olive and herbs. The metal scraper glides gently along your skin, carefully removing dirt and oils from your day exploring the city. Though unfamiliar, the sensation isn't painful, just a bit unusual. "You've had a long day, haven't you?" he teases lightly. You offer a polite chuckle, your embarrassment melting into mild amusement. After a few swift moments, he rinses you gently with warm water. The droplets offer immediate relief, washing away both tension and unease. "All done," he announces cheerfully, moving on to assist the next bather. You sit briefly, feeling refreshed, yet slightly dazed. Around you, others receive similar treatments. some chatting casually, others quietly relaxing. You find comfort in the shared experience, even if it feels unfamiliar. Nearby, a young man receives a vigorous massage, his masseur energetically discussing everyday Roman life. You politely avert your gaze, deciding to reserve any thoughts about Roman discussions for later contemplation. Deciding you've experienced enough heat for now, you carefully stand and head toward the exit legs, feeling refreshed yet slightly unsteady. You exchange polite nods with the elderly woman, still comfortably enjoying the warm water. Outside the caldarium, cooler air greets you gently. You inhale deeply, enjoying the momentary relief. Quickly, however, you're handed a clean towel by a bustling attendant who gestures briskly toward the next corridor, labeled Frigidarium. You accept it gratefully, following along obediently, curiosity and mild anxiety mingling together. The Frigidarium, a cold plunge room, lies ahead, a sharp contrast to the heat you just experienced. Its water glistens calm and inviting like a refreshing mirror. You pause at its edge, hesitating slightly. Your feet feel warm and sensitive, making the thought of cold water simultaneously appealing yet daunting. Summoning your courage, you slowly dip a toe into the water. The immediate chill jolts through your leg, briefly catching your breath. Nearby, bathers smile understandingly, gently encouraging you with nods and reassuring murmurs. Determined to see this through, you immerse yourself fully. The cool water envelops you, initially shocking, but soon settling into refreshing clarity. Your heartbeat steadies breathing, becoming calm and controlled. Finally emerging, you're promptly wrapped in a warm towel by an attendant, briskly rubbing warmth back into your skin. Gratitude fills you, the cool shock now transformed into a genuinely invigorating experience. Stepping away, you exhale deeply, feeling undeniably refreshed and quietly proud. Though the experience challenged your comfort zone, it also offered valuable perspective. You realize you've navigated a meaningful cultural ritual, one both challenging and rewarding. Still wrapped warmly in the towel, you prepare yourself calmly for whatever comes next. Each step forward brings anticipation and curiosity, but now mixed with a growing sense of appreciation and understanding. The towel around your shoulders feels both comforting and irritating, like an affectionate cat whose claws sink just a bit too deeply into your skin. You tug gently at its coarse fibers, hoping for a moment of true comfort. But instead, you're nudged forward by another brisk attendant who guides you toward a shadowed corridor marked simply yet mysteriously by the symbol of a shovel. You pause mid-step, staring at that shovel etched onto the stone wall. It feels out of place here in the baths, raising an uneasy question in your mind. Your hesitation is interrupted by the attendant's impatient sigh. Clearly lingering isn't encouraged. Taking a breath, filled with uncertainty, you shuffle onward. The hallway narrows walls, pressing closer, lined with worn mosaics, depicting improbable sea creatures. Their glassy eyes seem to watch you, skeptically questioning your every choice. You sympathize entirely. At the hallway's end lies a small, dim chamber where reality quickly clarifies the purpose of the shovel symbol. Several small metal scoops and baskets hang from the walls. The air carries an unmistakable but mild odor, making clear that you've reached the sanitation area. Sanitation duties, a voice announces neutrally. You glance toward its source, a grim-faced attendant whose tunic speaks of long hours of hard work. He hands you one of the scoops without ceremony, nodding toward a doorway. You help tidy the area first, then you bathe. You stare at the tool for a moment, trying to reconcile the lofty promises of Roman luxury with your current reality. With quiet resignation, You grip the scoop, tightly gathering your resolve, and step into the next room. Here, the true meaning of community becomes clear. Public baths are wonderful places to share conversation, laughter, and occasionally minor inconveniences related to cleanliness. Unfortunately, previous bathers might have left the area a bit untidy. Your first instinct is to retreat, but the attendant gently encourages you to proceed. So you crouch down, awkwardly, holding your breath, and quickly tidy the space. You focus on completing the task as efficiently and neatly as possible, eager to leave it behind. As you work, your mind drifts. Romans proudly boast of their civilization's cleanliness, yet you're seeing another side, less glamorous, more authentic. Each task quietly reminds you that history isn't just heroes and grandeur, but ordinary human realities as well. Nearby, another newcomer works alongside you. She catches your eye briefly, forming a quiet camaraderie, two strangers united by the awkwardness of their shared situation. You exchange a small smile, the universal language for, "How did we end up here?" The attendant eventually returns, evaluating your efforts calmly. After a moment, he nods. Good enough. Relief washes over you immediately. You quickly clean your hands thoroughly in a basin filled with scented water, eager to refresh yourself and put this experience firmly behind you. From there, you're led into a modest chamber, draped in soft fabrics, filled with the gentle aroma of lavender and honey. The contrast is so pleasant, you wonder if you've accidentally stepped into a different dimension. Another attendant, younger and friendlier looking, steps forward, holding small jars and pots filled with thick, fragrant creams. Without speaking, she gestures for you to sit. You obey, immediately grateful for any hint of comfort. She dips a wooden spoon into one jar, revealing a dense, creamy mixture flecked with herbs. She applies it gently to your skin, the coolness soothing away any remaining discomfort. She smiles gently, noticing your lingering tension. First time. You nod sheepishly, unsure how obvious your nervousness might be. She pats your shoulder kindly. Don't worry. Everyone reacts the same way at first. Even the Romans. You ask softly, feeling somehow like a child seeking reassurance. She chuckles warmly. Especially the Romans. They just hide it better. Her words comfort you oddly, like a secret shared among friends. Your muscles relax further as her gentle massage continues, the cream absorbing into your skin, leaving it supple and pleasantly scented. Gradually, you begin to feel fully restored. You wonder aloud about the contents of the cream, partly curious, partly desperate to fill the silence. She shrugs lightly. Olive oil, honey, lavender, and some ingredients only the apothecary knows. She winks playfully. Better not ask too much. You decide she's right. Ignorance at this point feels blissful. After what feels like luxurious eternity, she steps back, surveying her handiwork proudly. You're ready for the main pools now, she announces cheerfully. You smile gently, feeling a mixture of gratitude and cautious anticipation. The main pools lie beyond yet another marble archway, bustling with activity. Sounds of conversation, splashing water, and gentle laughter drift toward you, creating a comforting soundtrack. Yet beneath that pleasant hum lies a subtle awareness. You're heading into another unknown. You gather yourself, adjusted again to the shifting moods of Roman bathing. Your skin feels renewed yet vulnerable. The day's surprises have peeled away layers of your assumptions, leaving behind something honest, curious, and quietly hopeful. Standing at the threshold, you realize each room here is designed not just for cleansing, but also testing your endurance, emotional and physical. You've navigated warmth, cold awkwardness, and minor inconveniences. What else might await? With a resigned yet hopeful sigh, you step forward into the busy pool area, ready to discover what's next, and quietly hopeful the most challenging experiences are behind you. Though given this is a Roman bathhouse, perhaps you shouldn't be too sure about that. Stepping into the main pool area feels a bit like emerging onto the stage of a play for which you've forgotten your lines. A hush seems to ripple subtly around you, not enough to draw attention, but enough to make you feel unmistakably noticed. Dozens of bathers lounge casually scattered around pools whose surfaces shimmer with a seductive yet slightly suspicious iridescence. You pause briefly, attempting a casual glance around the spacious chamber. Tall marble columns stretch gracefully toward a vaulted ceiling, decorated with vivid frescoes, scenes of gods, heroes, and mythical creatures, painted in faded hues of blue and gold. It's undoubtedly beautiful, but the effect is marred slightly by a streak of mold creeping along one corner, silently defying the grandeur. Around you, Romans seem utterly at ease, reclining languidly in shallow waters, discussing poetry, politics, and personal dramas. Laughter drifts lazily, mingling with occasional splashes and soft murmurs. For a moment, you envy their comfort. They belong here. They've perfected the art of casual public bathing, an art clearly alien to you. Taking a deep breath, bracing yourself for yet another round of awkward immersion, you carefully select a smaller, quieter pool in one corner, hoping to draw minimal attention. The water feels warm and silky as you dip a cautious toe in testing once again for hidden surprises. Satisfied, or at least resigned, you lower yourself gently, feeling muscles loosen in welcome surrender. You exhale slowly, cautiously, optimistic. Perhaps this is the true Roman bath experience you've heard praise, the restorative soak free from embarrassing incidents and humiliating tasks. You close your eyes briefly, savoring the tentative peace. It lasts precisely 5 seconds. A voice beside you interrupts your brief reverie. New here, it belongs to a middle-aged man with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes sparkling with polite curiosity. You nod hesitantly, offering a polite if wary smile. "Welcome," he says, cheerfully, leaning slightly closer. "Enjoying it so far?" You pause mentally, debating honesty versus diplomacy. "It's been educational," you reply tactfully. He chuckles knowingly. "Ah, yes. Roman baths are indeed an education in themselves. Where else do you learn the art of diplomacy while unclothed and slightly humiliated?" You relax, slightly comforted by his candor. "I take it you come here often." He waves a hand expansively. "Every day. It's essential socializing, cleansing the soul, escaping my family." He grins conspiratorially. "Don't tell my wife I said that. Your secret's safe," you assure him. He settles back against the tiled edge expression, turning philosophical. "You know these baths represent Rome in miniature. Here the senator bathes alongside the common merchant. The poet chats with the soldier. It's both beautiful and chaotic a place where class lines blur and social roles dissolve." You glance around, seeing his point. An elderly patrician lounges beside a muscular laborer, deep in amicable conversation. Nearby, two young women whisper animatedly, sharing confidences as steam curls gently around them. Here, distinctions do indeed fade, replaced by an odd communal intimacy that feels both comforting and deeply unsettling. "Sounds ideal," you muse softly. He shrugs lightly, smiling wryly. "In theory, yes, but ideals are messy when lived. For instance, Have you noticed the young senator over there? He subtly nods toward a younger man whose toga rests artfully folded behind him. He bathes daily to maintain appearances, yet hates every moment. You raise an eyebrow, intrigued. Why too public? Too intrusive, he explains. Yet, not attending would raise questions about his character. So he endures wearing a pleasant mask while inwardly longing for solitude. You glance toward the senator, sympathetically recognizing the tension behind his easy smile. The baths, you realize, aren't just places of physical cleansing. They're arenas of subtle social performances. Everyone plays their part, carefully managing perceptions, even while ostensibly relaxing. Your companion continues warming to his theme, and the women look there. He points discreetly to a cluster of richly adorned matrons chatting softly. Appearances again. They discuss husbands, children, rumors, all the while observing each other carefully, noting hairstyles, jewelry, demeanor. You watch them briefly, seeing smiles that never quite reach their eyes. It's intriguing and exhausting, just watching their delicate dance. So no one truly relaxes here, you ask softly, a touch disappointed. He laughs softly. Oh, we do. We relax into our roles, comfortable in the rhythm of these expectations. Perhaps that's what true relaxation is, accepting and mastering the masks we wear. You consider this, quietly struck by the bittersweet wisdom. Perhaps that's why these baths, beautiful yet fraught, hold such appeal. They promise relaxation, but deliver something deeper, more nuanced lessons in human nature, in compromise, in quiet endurance. After a moment, your companion rises smoothly from the pool water, streaming gently down his torso. He nods warmly. Enjoy your soak. Remember, here appearances matter, but only as much as you allow. With a final friendly smile, he strides away, leaving you alone with your thoughts. You sink slightly deeper into the water, absorbing his insights along with the heat. Perhaps he's right. Perhaps true relaxation requires embracing imperfection, your own and others. It's oddly comforting. Your peaceful contemplation is suddenly interrupted by a loud splash from the nearby central pool. You glance quickly, startled. A young boy, clearly excited and clearly unsupervised, has jumped exuberantly into the water, drenching everyone nearby. Grumbles and laughter ripple through the crowd, a mixture of annoyance and indulgence. Romans, it seems, understand this too. Life's messy moments are simply part of the package. Smiling faintly, you close your eyes again. This is Rome, after all, a place where contradictions coexist comfortably, even beautifully. Here, relaxation and tension, luxury and awkwardness blend seamlessly, creating experiences unforgettable precisely because of their flaws. Eventually, your fingertips begin to wrinkle, signaling you've lingered long enough. You reluctantly rise, water streaming down your refreshed yet weary body. Wrapping yourself again in your towel, you shuffle slowly toward the exit, feeling oddly accomplished. Yet, just as you think you've successfully navigated the bath's complexities, an attendant appears holding out yet another basket, filled with what looks suspiciously like seaweed and mud. Therapeutic wraps next, she announces cheerfully. You sigh inwardly, smiling weakly. Clearly, Rome isn't finished teaching you lessons. Not yet. Accepting your fate and the basket, you brace yourself for whatever awaits. After all, you remind yourself, relaxing here is less about comfort and more about resilience. And resilience, you decide, is something you've learned abundantly today. You follow the attendant down a corridor that smells like freshly turned soil and burnt time. She walks briskly, her sandals slapping against the floor, like a metronome of impending discomfort. You trail behind, still damp, still dazed, still wondering how something as supposedly luxurious as a spa day has felt more like surviving an oddly polite obstacle course. You arrive in what must be the therapeutic wrapping chamber, though no sign officially confirms it. Instead, your senses do. The smell hits first sharp herbs, moist earth, and something suspiciously fishy. Then your eyes confirm. It rows of reclining figures lying on stone benches, wrapped head to toe in what looks like damp burlap soaked in swamp. The attendant gestures to an open bench with the same enthusiasm a dentist reserves for the words open wide. You hesitate briefly examining the muddy concoction being stirred in a nearby clay vat. It's thick, dark, and lumpy, like the result of mixing expired yogurt with riverbank sludge. She notices your pause and smiles reassuringly. Very good for the skin, she says. Removes all impurities. Also, parasites. You blink. Parasites. She nods. Tiny ones. You can't see them, but they know. That's not comforting. Still, you've come this far. Turning back now would be an admission of defeat, and you're far too committed to the Roman bathing saga to retreat at the mud stage. You lay down gingerly on the bench, wincing at the coldness of the stone against your already scrubbed skin. The mud is applied with what can only be described as professional indifference. A thick paste slathered from neck to ankles, applied with wide wooden paddles that show no regard for personal space or emotional fragility. The mud is cool at first, even soothing, but then it begins to dry, and with it, any ability to move naturally. Once your body is sufficiently coated, they begin the wrapping. Strips of cloth are wound around you in layers tight enough to keep you from escaping, but not tight enough to be mistaken for a hug. Within minutes, you resemble a burrito prepared by a mildly resentful chef. There, the attendant announces, "Now, rest." You lie there completely still, surrounded by other damp burritos groaning softly. And you wonder if this is what mummies feel like just before burial. The wrap begins to warm from your body heat, releasing a fresh wave of swampy aroma. You breathe through your mouth. Time slows. You're unsure whether it's the heat, the lack of movement, or the vague feeling that you've been tricked into joining a Roman salad bar, but your mind begins to drift. You start contemplating life's bigger questions like, why didn't anyone mention this in Latin class? And is this how emperors relaxed, or how they punished nobles who flirted with the wrong wife? Eventually, the attendant returns. She checks your wrap with a practiced press of the fingers and nods. Ready, she says, and begins unwrapping you. The cloth comes off with a faint tearing sound and a burst of damp earth smell. You exhale involuntarily, partly from relief, partly from the sheer absurdity of it all. Beneath the cloth, your skin feels soft, suspiciously soft, like steamed vegetables. You wiggle your fingers experimentally. Yes, still attached. Good. You're led to a rinsing station where another young attendant pours lukewarm water over you, washing away the residual mud. You stand dripping and blinking like someone who just survived a strange initiation ritual into a club they never asked to join. Very clean now, the attendant says proudly. You nod, not sure if she's congratulating you or herself. As you dry off once again, you notice something unexpected. Your skin really is smoother. There's a faint glow to it, like a reward for enduring weirdness. You rub your arm experimentally, and for the first time since entering the baths, smile without irony. Your moment of peace is broken by a commotion near the entrance. A man tall and clearly annoyed storms into the chamber wearing only half a toga and a full scowl. "Who took my sandal?" he demands. It was right there by the caldarium. The room stills. Everyone pointedly avoids eye contact. Somewhere behind you, someone lets out a suspicious cough. The man glares around before disappearing into the hallway, still muttering about theft and foot hygiene. You return to toweling off, suppressing a laugh. It seems the baths always have one more surprise waiting. Freshly cleaned and wrapped once more in a lighter linen, you're guided to the resting hall, a quieter room filled with cushions and low couches. It's shaded, incense-filled, and blessedly peaceful. No yelling, no steam, no mud, just quiet. You lie down carefully, your body still adjusting to being treated kindly. A soft breeze slips through the window slit. You exhale, feeling your breath finally match the room's rhythm. A slave enters with a tray of dried figs and wine. You accept one of each, chewing slowly, as though savoring not just the flavor, but the moment this strange, hard-won piece. As your eyes close, you realize something quietly profound. You don't regret coming here? Not exactly. But you do have questions for every historian who ever described Roman baths as relaxing without footnotes. Still, you think to yourself, if you survive the next chamber, you might just begin to understand them. You drift somewhere between rest and alertness in the cooling quiet of the resting hall. The cushions are flatter than they look, and the wine you sipped earlier has gone straight to your legs, making them feel like pleasantly useless noodles. Through half-lidded eyes, you watch dust float lazily in the shafts of sunlight streaming through a narrow window. If there's any moment in the entire experience that feels close to peace, it's this one. And then the door creaks open. A small boy, no more than 10, sprints into the chamber naked as a peeled grape and laughing hysterically. He's holding what appears to be someone's sandal above his head, like a trophy. Behind him, a woman shouts his name with the tone of a parent who has lost the battle but clings to hope for the war. He vanishes behind a curtain. The shouting fades. No one moves. Someone near you lets out a sigh, so deep and weary, it feels like it's been carried from centuries ago. You close your eyes again and try to pretend you're alone. A few minutes later, your rest is gently interrupted by the soft scrape of sandals and the clink of a tray. A new attendant approaches this one older, with a face that looks like it's been carved out of tree bark. She's carrying a small bowl filled with crushed herbs and a long curved spoon made of bone. She doesn't ask. She just smiles faintly and gestures to your face. You nod, because why not? Resistance is futile here. With the careful, deliberate movements of someone who's done this for a lifetime, she begins smearing the cool herb paste across your cheeks, forehead, and chin. The scent is strangely invigorating mint sage, something vaguely peppery. The texture is grainy, but not unpleasant. As she works, she hums a low tune, some ancient melody that seems to resonate deep in your chest. "You have city skin," she says quietly. You blink. "Excuse me." "City skin," she repeats with a smile. Tense, always looking around. Not soft, not quiet. You don't know how to respond to that, so you settle for a polite grunt, which she accepts like a full confession. "This will help," she says, patting your cheek gently. You believe her. You don't know why, but you do. She finishes the mask and leaves you to let it set. The cooling sensation creeps slowly across your face, tightening slightly as it dries. For a few minutes, you lie still again, letting the hum of distant conversations and dripping water lull you into a trance-like state. You are abruptly brought back to reality by the sharp snap of a towel. Somewhere behind you, two men, both well into middle age, both clearly long-time bath regulars, are locked in a half-serious, half-slapstick towel duel. Each seems to be trying to outdo the other in dramatic flailing punctuated by theatrical groans and exaggerated limps. The attendant with the face like a bark sculpture walks past them without so much as a blink. She's clearly seen worse. A few moments later, she returns and gently wipes your face clean with warm water and a strip of linen. Your skin feels fresh. Too fresh. You're now convinced it has never actually been clean until this exact moment in your life. She gives you a quiet nod and walks away. You sit up slowly, taking in the room again. The atmosphere here is less chaotic than the rest of the baths, but still tinged with the strange constant awareness that you're never quite alone. Every conversation is overheard, every motion noticed in peripheral glances. It's not paranoia, it's etiquette. That's when you hear it, the voice. Silky smooth, strangely familiar, and just loud enough to command attention. Friends, Romans bathers, lend me your ears. You turn your head instinctively. A man in his late 40s, wrapped in nothing but a modest towel and a confident smirk, is standing near the central pillar, holding a half-eaten fig like a microphone. He has the undeniable air of someone who once failed out of theater school but never let go of the dream. He begins a dramatic retelling of the founding of Rome, entirely inaccurate. He claims Romulus was raised by not just a wolf, but also an eagle and a surprisingly supportive goat. He reenacts the stabbing of Remus with such flair that a small group of listeners actually applauds. You're too tired to be annoyed. Instead, you let the rhythm of his voice wash over you, content to be entertained, however questionably. At some point, a sleepy man lying next to you mumbles, "He's here every week." You nod, sagely. Figures. And yet, there's something weirdly soothing about his presence. Maybe it's the predictability. Maybe it's that even in this place of constant novelty and public vulnerability, someone is still brave or delusional enough to perform mythological fan fiction. Eventually, your limbs tell you they're ready to move again. You rise slowly, joints creaking like ancient hinges, and stretch gently. A passing servant offers you a fresh towel. You accept it like a sacred gift. It's time to move on. But to where? You're directed toward a small staircase tucked behind a curtain embroidered with olive branches. The servant explains in a whisper that feels both reverent and ominous that it leads to the quiet pools. No further detail. You pause, half expecting a final test, a surprise eel massage, or a musical interpretive history of Augustus performed underwater. But curiosity and fatigue win out. You step behind the curtain towel draped around your shoulders like a cloak and begin the descent. What lies below is cool, still, silent, but not empty. Not at all. The air shifts the moment you descend the last step. It's cooler here, noticeably so. The warmth and noise of the upper baths seem to vanish behind the curtain, swallowed whole by this lower chamber's hush. Sound doesn't echo, it vanishes. Your own breathing feels too loud. Even your steps are cautious, as if your body instinctively knows this place demands reverence. This, you gather quickly, is not the space for towel duels or dramatic goat-inclusive origin myths. The chamber is dimly lit by small oil lamps set into the walls, their flames flickering gently against polished stone. The floor is a mosaic of deep blues and greens, depicting what looks like Neptune riding a giant sea turtle. His eyes are just a bit too wide. You avoid looking directly at him. You move forward, and there they are, the quiet pools. 4 of them set in a square, each one perfectly still. The water is darker than in the upper chambers, as though it remembers things. Each pool is surrounded by reclining figures, some wrapped in towels, others sitting cross-legged eyes, closed hands resting palm up on their knees. No one speaks. You're not entirely sure if you're allowed to be here. Then a robed figure, gender indeterminate, an expression unreadable, glides toward you. They don't speak. They simply bow, slightly offer you a folded cloth, and gesture toward the nearest pool. You take it with the solemnity of someone handed a baby in a church and nod your thanks. The cloth turns out to be a meditation wrap, light, sheer, cool to the touch. You wrap it around your shoulders and lower yourself carefully onto one of the cushioned benches beside the pool. The stone is cool. The cushion is cool. The silence, somehow, even cooler. You begin to relax again. It's different here. No performance, no noise, no rogue sandals. Just the sound of slow water movement, barely perceptible, like a heartbeat beneath the marble. You close your eyes not to sleep, but to listen more closely. And that's when you hear it, a sound so faint, it might just be imagined. A slow ripple, a deep inhalation, as if the room itself is breathing. You open your eyes again, half expecting something mystical. Instead, you see him, an elderly man, with a beard so white it glows faintly in the low light, is standing waist deep in one of the pools. His eyes are closed. His hands are floating just above the water's surface. He is still completely, like a statue carved by time itself. The others pay him no mind. They've seen him before, perhaps every day. But for you, his presence seems to command the room, not through force, but through gravity. He's not the center. He's the anchor. A nearby bather leans toward you and whispers so softly you almost miss it. He used to be a senator. Now he comes here every morning. He says it's the only place that doesn't lie. You're not sure what that means, but you believe it anyway. You stare at the water, which reflects nothing and everything at once. In it, you see yourself, not the version who confidently entered the baths hours ago, but the version now peeled, softened, and uncertain. The real version, perhaps, or at least one you're learning to accept. Eventually, the robed attendant returns. This time, they offer a small cup made of smooth ceramic. Inside, warm tea, fragrant light, with notes of lemon and something earthy. You sip it gratefully, letting the warmth settle gently in your chest. The quiet continues. And then, like a gently lapping tide, the silence is broken, not by words, but by a soft voice singing. It's the senator. He sings in Latin slow and deliberate, a melody that wavers like the flickering oil lamps. You don't understand the words, but the emotion is unmistakable. Longing, resignation, peace. The notes settle into your skin like dust. No one claps. No one comments. They simply listen. When the song ends, the silence returns more whole than before. You don't want to leave. Not because it's comfortable, though it is, but because it feels like the last honest part of the bathhouse. Here, there are no performances, no competition, no expectations, just breath water and quiet. But of course, all stillness is temporary. A soft chime sounds some kind of signal. The robed attendant bows to each bather, one by one, a silent thank you. It's time to leave the quiet pools. You rise reluctantly, folding your meditation cloth and handing it back with the care of someone returning a treasured object. The attendant accepts it with the faintest of nods. As you turn to go, you glance back at the senator. His eyes are still closed. He hums now, wordless, just a thread of tune barely there. Back through the curtain, back up the stairs, back into the world of clatter and chatter and slippery floors. The transition is jarring. Your ears feel too open. Every sound is too loud, too sharp. The laughter here grates. The voices feel artificial, and yet you understand. Now this, too, is part of the ritual. The noise sharpens the quiet. The quiet gives the noise its meaning. You rejoin the flow of bathers, like a leaf joining a river. You're not the same. You know that. You're not sure how exactly, but something inside you has shifted, softened, stilled. You wrap your towel tighter and move forward. You reemerge into the bright clamor of the upper baths, like someone waking from a nap they didn't realize they needed. The light feels different now, sharper, almost confrontational. You blink against it, your pupils sluggish, after the soft shadows of the quiet pools. A group of young men passes you, dripping wet, laughing too loudly. One of them is holding a sponge like it's a weapon. They're reenacting a battle, apparently using buckets of water and exaggerated sword noises. You sidestep instinctively, avoiding a splash that hits the floor beside you with a dramatic slop. And just like that, you're back in the theater. You spot a familiar face reclining against a pillar, the fig-eating storyteller from earlier. He's regaling a small group with a tale involving a haunted aqueduct and a vengeful bath spirit named Flavia. His towel has slipped alarmingly low, but no one seems concerned. He winks at you mid-sentence like you're in on the joke. You offer a polite nod and keep walking. Your destination is unclear, but your feet carry you with quiet purpose through the mosaic corridors, past the columns, past two women arguing about olive oil, past a basket of wilted laurel wreaths that might once have been decorative or ceremonial, or just poorly stored lunch. You pause at a carved wooden door, half open. The room beyond looks smaller, more private. You peek in. It's a grooming room. 3 attendants work efficiently, trimming hair, plucking stray brow hairs, with tiny frightening instruments rubbing perfumed oil into shoulders. The room smells like honey and pine resin with a hint of burning sandalwood. A young man gestures to an open chair. You hesitate. You've been steamed, scraped, slathered, wrapped, and rinsed. Do you really need grooming? Your reflection in a polished metal basin says yes. Your hair looks like it lost a fight with a squirrel, and your face, though suspiciously glowing, also bears the faint outline of whatever cloth they used to apply the herbal mask. You look like a philosophical raisin. You nod. The young man guides you into the chair, adjusts the tilt, and begins without a word. First comes the comb, wooden wide-toothed, and surprisingly gentle. He hums quietly as he works some folk tune with an uneven rhythm. You find yourself trying to guess the lyrics, even though there probably aren't any. He spritzes your face with rose water, wipes it carefully, then dabs a thick golden oil along your temples and jawline. The scent is pleasant, sweet, clean, and just a little bit smug. He produces a tiny blade, holds it up for your inspection, then begins shaving the edges of your neck and cheeks with delicate precision. It's less a haircut and more a restoration, like he's revealing the version of your face that's been waiting beneath the soot and social expectations of daily life. Another attendant joins massaging your hands with something gritty and minty. You catch your reflection again. You look strange, familiar, but softer, like you've been remastered in a slightly higher resolution. Once finished, they both step back, nodding approvingly. Handsome, one of them says. It's not flirtation, it's assessment. You laugh softly. Handsome enough to leave. They don't answer. But your feet take that as a yes. You rise lighter, somehow, like parts of you were shaved off that had nothing to do with hair. Outside, the light is shifting again early afternoon. The sun no longer pours in from overhead, but casts long dramatic shadows through the columns. It feels like a different day entirely. A lifetime ago, you had walked in here thinking it would be simple. A bath, a soak, a story to tell your friends. Now, you're not even sure you're the same person. A servant approaches with a small scroll. You raise an eyebrow. Your schedule, she says simply. My schedule, she points. You have a massage booked in the atrium, then snacks in the solarium, then a philosophical dialogue near the heated tiles. Optional. You stare at the scroll. It is indeed your name at the top. You don't remember signing up for anything. Did I? She cuts you off with a polite shrug. Everyone does. Eventually. And somehow, that makes sense. You follow her past the arched doorway and through a fragrant courtyard filled with orange trees and bees that seem unusually organized. Other bathers recline under canvas canopies, sipping diluted wine and nibbling on grapes that have been cut into suspiciously symmetrical halves. You arrive at the atrium, a bright circular space with heated floors and a gurgling fountain in the center. A man wearing a belt made entirely of tiny oil bottles gestures to you. You lie down on a low table, the stone warm and firm beneath your back. He begins pouring oil across your chest like he's seasoning a roast. His hands are large, practiced, confident. He doesn't speak. Instead, he uses his thumbs to find every knot you've ever accumulated, some physical, some spiritual. He presses them until they confess. Your body responds first with resistance, then with surrender. You lose track of time, of thought, of identity. You're just a body being quietly reminded that pain isn't always punishment. At some point, he leans close and whispers, "You carry your tension like a centurion carries his armor." You open one eye. And how do I stop? He shrugs. Put it down. And that, you realize, is the entire thesis of the Roman bath. You close your eyes, again letting go. Letting it all go. You emerge from the massage table, a changed creature, not quite reborn, but definitely reheated and reshaped. Your muscles feel like softened wax. Your spine seems 2 inches longer, and your brain has entered a kind of low-power mode where thoughts drift slowly, like breadcrumbs in olive oil. The servant from earlier reappears, nodding politely, as though your liquefied state is completely expected. "Solarium next," she says, "for light warmth and restorative fruits." You nod your neck, moving like a lazy reed in the wind. She leads you down a hallway where the air smells of citrus and baked clay. The sun shines brighter, here filtered through high windows made of thin alabaster sheets. The floor warms your feet. Somewhere nearby, someone is singing softly. Not words, just sound a lullaby for grown-ups who have forgotten they needed one. The solarium is a rectangular courtyard enclosed on 3 sides, open to the sky above. A few low couches are arranged under awnings, and a long marble table is set with bowls of pomegranates, figs, dates, almonds, olives, and some mysterious fruit that looks like a hybrid between a grape and a tiny sea creature. You lower yourself onto one of the couches, your towel now more of a suggestion than clothing, and select a fig. It squishes satisfyingly between your fingers. You eat slowly, savoring it, because that's the only pace you seem capable of now. Time has melted. You're not sure what hour it is or if it matters. A man sitting two couches away speaks without turning his head. You're new. You glance at him. He's wearing a wreath, not a dramatic one, just a few olive branches arranged with casual precision, and his fingers are stained from pomegranate juice. You nod. Is it that obvious? He shrugs. New people always chew slowly and stare at everything like they expect it to ask them a question. That's accurate. You've made it through the worst, though, he says. From here on, it's all digestion and philosophy. I'm not sure which one is harder. He laughs. They're the same, really. Both involve sitting down, groaning occasionally, and trying to make sense of what just happened. You smile despite yourself. He tears another piece of fruit and tosses it into his mouth, like he's been training for it. So he continues, "What did the baths teach you?" You pause. A breeze carries the scent of rosemary and baked brick across your face. That I have too much tension, you say honestly, and that quiet is louder than I thought. He nods approvingly. Not bad for a beginner. You want to ask him more? How long he's been coming here? Whether he ever feels awkward wearing nothing but a towel in front of strangers? But he closes his eyes and leans back. The conversation already folded away, like a napkin after a meal. You turn your attention to the center of the courtyard, where a small bird hops along the tiles, pecking at crumbs and fluttering its wings with precise impatience. It stops near your couch, stares at you like you've interrupted something, and then flies off with an aggressive chirp. You watch it go, strangely moved. After a while, someone gently clears their throat. A new attendant holding a scroll and looking like they've just memorized an epic poem. Philosophical dialogue begins in the southeast alcove, they announce, as if this were the most natural sentence in the world. Several bathers rise slowly, adjusting their towels and gathering their dignity. You follow, not because you need more philosophy, but because your fig bowl is empty and your curiosity somehow is not. The alcove is shaded half silent and smells like ink and dust and sweat that's been earned, not leaked. Cushions are laid in a circle, and in the middle stands a short pedestal holding a single wax tablet with something scribbled on it in looping cursive. A man with thick eyebrows and the voice of someone who once lost a debate and never got over it begins the conversation. Is cleanliness, he says, a state of body or a state of soul? You blink. Someone beside you whispers, "It's always the same first question." The man continues, "We cleanse the flesh. We scour. We oil. We scrub. But are we purging ourselves or hiding our filth in more socially acceptable fragrances?" You shift slightly on your cushion, unsure if this is metaphorical or an attack on your choice of bath oil. A woman with tightly braided hair raises her hand. "Isn't the body just the gateway? We cleanse it to reach the mind." Another man counters, "But we also decorate it, adorn it, flaunt it. That's not purification, that's peacocking." This goes on for quite some time. Arguments bloom and wilt like vines in a courtyard. Some are sharp, some are baffling. One participant insists that true cleanliness is measured by how long your dog will still recognize your scent. No one quite knows what to do with that, so they let it sit in the air like incense. You listen more than you speak, not because you have nothing to say, but because you're still processing the idea that here naked, wrinkled, and slightly overoiled people are still willing to debate ideas like purity and virtue. Eventually, the debate winds down, not with a conclusion, but with a collective sigh. No answers, just better questions. And maybe that's the point. You rise quietly, stretch your limbs, and wander back through the courtyard. The sun is lower, now spilling gold across the tiles. A servant hands you a fresh towel. You nod in thanks, wrap it loosely around your shoulders, and breathe in the end of the afternoon. You're not clean in the way a marble statue is clean. You're clean like a river after rain, still flowing, still thinking, still here. You begin to notice something strange, not alarming, just strange. A subtle shift in the rhythm of the bathhouse. Earlier, everything moved in layers of loud and louder splashing and chattering clamor and clatter. But now, as the sun angles low and the shadow of a fig tree reaches across the mosaic courtyard like a sleepy yawn, something shifts. The volume has dimmed. The splashes grow infrequent. Conversations drift into murmurs. Even the ever-enthusiastic towel warriors seem to have surrendered their weapons, now discarded rags drying over railings. The bathhouse is winding down, not shutting off, but softening, like a candle nearing its base. You follow this quiet current toward the final pool. It's called the Laconicum, which sounds impressive until you realize it's just a fancy term for sweaty, extremely hot room with no escape. But there's a sense of gravity to it, like this is where the real Romans go to prove themselves. Not to others, to themselves. A wide marble door opens inward with a muted groan. A wave of dry heat greets you, not aggressive, like the caldarium's wet steam, but more solemn, ancient. It feels like standing inside a bread oven just as it finishes baking a truth you didn't know you were avoiding. You step in cautiously, and instantly your skin tightens in protest. The air is dry sharp and spiced faintly with eucalyptus and something more feral like the smell of scorched laurel leaves. The floor is heated. The benches are heated. The air is heated. Even your thoughts start to feel like they're sweating. A few bathers are already seated around the edges of the circular room. None of them speak. They sit with their eyes closed, their breathing shallow, their limbs draped loosely, like abandoned laundry. Everyone here has passed through the same gauntlet of water, oil, herb philosophy and fig. This is the final test: silence, heat, and stillness. You take a spot, tucking your towel beneath you, more out of formality than function. The bench radiates warmth through your legs instantly. You settle into it slowly, like a letter being pressed into wax. Time loses all its sharp corners. Your breath becomes deliberate. Each inhale is like swallowing warm paper. Each exhale is a tiny exorcism of tension. The room doesn't want anything from you. And for once, neither do you. You sit and sweat and think. Well, try to think. At first, your brain offers up familiar themes. Tasks left undone, half-remembered names. The question of whether anyone has ever successfully looked dignified while slipping on a wet floor. But the heat is relentless. It strips your thoughts like paint off a weathered statue until nothing remains but sensation, pulse, breath. The sound of one droplet falling every so often from the condensation on the ceiling. It hits the floor, with a small clock marking time in a way that feels more honest than any sundial. Eventually, your mind grows quiet, not empty, just less chatty. You start noticing things you hadn't before. The way your fingers twitch occasionally, involuntarily. The way your chest rises more slowly now, your whole body adapting to conserve itself. The way someone across from you is quietly humming under their breath, a tone so low and steady it could be mistaken for the vibration of the stones. Then the door opens briefly. Cooler air rushes in like gossip, and a new bather enters, an older man with a posture like a question mark and a scar running down one side of his ribs. He settles in silently, doesn't look at anyone, just closes his eyes, joins the rhythm. It hits you then that this room, for all its simplicity, might be the most honest place in the entire bathhouse. Here, there are no debates, no oil, no theatrics, no towels slipping accidentally, just people reduced to breath and heat, all of them bare, all of them silent, all of them equal. And then suddenly, without warning or ceremony, someone stands. He walks to the center of the room slowly, with a kind of respectful gravity, and then, in the quietest voice you've ever heard, amplified by stone walls, he says, "Let the world burn itself clean. No one laughs, no one questions." He walks out, and everyone exhales, long, slow, uncoordinated, like a room full of lungs, finally realizing they've been holding their breath. You stay a few moments longer, long enough to feel your skin loosen its grip on your bones, long enough to feel your heart calm into the rhythm of the tile beneath your feet. And then finally you stand. You nod to no one in particular, and you leave the Laconicum. The marble door groans shut behind you, sealing in the heat and something else, something you don't have a name for, but feel lodged behind your sternum like a quiet vow. Outside, the air feels crisp, cool, alive. You breathe it in like it's the first breath you've ever taken. And maybe in a way it is.